Earth's evil twin. The thing is, this world once started off quite similar to our home planet. But later, something went wrong. These days, the two planets are relatively close and similar in size. But Venus's atmosphere is very different from that on our planet, all thanks to a runaway greenhouse effect that has been going on for a long time. The surface of Venus can get even hotter than the surface of Mercury, 864 degrees F, and the surface pressure feels as if you're more than half a mile underwater. The thick atmosphere presents its own challenges. Its clouds consist of sulfuric acid, which is used in lead-acid batteries as well as industrial cleaners. And if you decided to land on the planet, you'd have to survive atmospheric entry, with friction heating you up to 20,000 degrees F. Still, people have always wanted to explore this inhospitable world, and we can't but talk about the Venera program. During the 1970s and 1980s, several spacecraft studied Venus from orbit and from its hostile surface for an hour or so at a time. The 10 successful Venera landers provided us with most of the data we have today about the surface of this mysterious planet, including surface composition, direct measurements of atmospheric conditions, and sets of unique images. At the same time, astronomers got their hands on these treasures only after a series of annoying failures. They started with Venera 1, launched in February 1961. Each consequent spacecraft was somehow improved and upgraded, but it still wasn't until the fifth group of Venus-bound space probes launched in 1967 that one of them, Venera 4, reached its target and sent data from Venus. Before that, Venera 2 and 3, launched in November 1965, were supposed to land on Venus, but both of them failed in transit. 11-foot-tall Venera 4 was a hefty thing. Its bottom lander was a bunch of instruments and a battery wrapped up in a pressure shell equipped with a parachute. This probe reached Venus in October 1967 and successfully launched the lander. The mother spaceship sent the probe flying over the planet, and it entered Venus's atmosphere. Temperatures were reaching 20,000 degrees F, and the entry force was as great as 450 G. It didn't prevent the onboard instruments from analyzing the atmosphere and sending back data. The first recorded temperature was 102 degrees F, and atmospheric pressure was similar to that on Earth. But the deeper the probe went, the higher the numbers became. 10 atmospheres, 20. They kept going up much higher than engineers had anticipated. 93 minutes into the mission, when the probe was still more than 16 miles above the surface of the planet, Venera 4 cracked open near its top and crashed. At the crash point, the measurements showed 22 atmospheres and 530 degrees F. Scientists realized that they needed a bigger spaceship. After some intense engineering, Venera 5 and Venera 6 saw the light of the day. Engineers did everything they could to make the landing probe stronger, but they were pressed for time. That's why Venera 5 and 6 were not fully prepared when they went on a mission. That's why Venera 5 transmitted data for a mere 53 minutes before succumbing to temperatures of 600 degrees F and pressures of 27 atmospheres. And Venera 6 lasted for 51 minutes. In any case now, the leaders of the project knew what it would take. 840 degrees F, 100 atmospheres, corrosive acids. They seemed to be prepared. They found new materials to build the probe. They got a hotter and stronger test chamber for the trials. They modified the parachute to make the lander fall faster so that the probe could spend as much time on the surface as possible. The lander was also designed in the shape of an egg and made of titanium, so its surface was smooth and had just a few ports, welds, and substructures. The insides were lined with a shock absorber and insulation layer. The chamber was also to pre-chill to freezing temperatures before entry. And Venera 7 was finally a success. It reached the planet in December 1970, separated from the mothership, and went down into the atmosphere. The probe transmitted data for 35 minutes, and things seemed smooth. But then, its chute melted, and the probe dropped like a rock, hitting the ground at 35 miles per hour and bouncing. Then, a second after the landing, the signal was abruptly cut. It looked like the probe crashed to bits. Shockingly, a few months later, while looking through all the data they managed to get, engineers rediscovered the signal. It was super weak and lost amidst the noise. Apparently, when Venera 7 bounced, it misaligned the antenna. The probe rested on its side, which weakened the signal to 1 or 3% of its initial strength. The probe kept transmitting data for 23 minutes. After that, the temperatures got too high and melted its shell. Venera 8, launched in 1972, had a similar design and experienced a similar fate. Venera 9 and 10 were a new generation of probes. They could send back black and white photos. It was actually the probe's main goal, to send the first ever photographic panorama from another planet. Venera 9 and 10 were 5 times heavier than their predecessors and weighed 5 tons at launch. The lander was 6.5 feet tall. It was basically a hermetically sealed titanium sphere that was supposed to hold the instruments. It was bolted with gold wire seals. Inside, there were shelves of beryllium and electric fans, whose main goal was to disperse heat to prevent instrument failure. On the bottom of the lander, there was a shock-absorbing ring. And at the top, there was a titanium ring that looked like a hat. It served as an aero brake. The parachute was supposed to detach at 30 miles above the surface, and the aero brake had to do the rest. In October 1975, Venera 9 and 10 arrived at Venus and landed as planned. Venera 9 was the first to land. It touched down on a slight slope, a volcanic crater or a hill, and kicked quite a bit of dust while landing. One of its 2 cameras succeeded in photographing and transmitting data, and soon scientists saw the first ever pictures of the surface of Venus. It was mostly sharp rocks, soil, and a distant horizon. The sun was slightly obscured by clouds that day. A gentle breeze was blowing. Overall, it was a pleasant morning. If you didn't pay attention to crushing pressure, almost completely waterless atmosphere, insanely high temperatures, and corrosive acids. Venera 10 landed in the same way a few days later, but the terrain it landed on was much more boring. Just a rolling plain with hardened pieces of magma. Both probes transmitted for 40 to 60 minutes until their orbiters went out of range. When it happened, the temperatures inside the probes were reaching 140 degrees F. The orbiters later burned up in the atmosphere after completing their mission. Venera 11 and 12 could have been a success, but a mysterious electric anomaly messed up with their cameras, so their trip was quickly forgotten. And Venera 13 and 14 entered the picture. They had improved scientific instruments and cameras that could take color images, and new heat-resistant technologies were used during the creation of these probes. Venera 13 arrived first and landed as planned. It took 2 photos, one black and white and the other in color. In the photos, one could see a surface of pebbled, loose soil and outcroppings of bedrock. It all looked pretty similar to the surface of the ocean. In the distance, there were rolling plateaus and an orange sky. The images taken later by Venera 14 showed a more weathered plain with less loose soil and fine-grained rocks. The 2 probes also sent back what they heard. It mostly sounded like a gently blowing wind with hints of distant rumbling. Could be Venus quakes. Venera 13 and 14 were the last landers to touch the surface of the planet. Venera 15 and 16 just flew around Venus, mapping its topography from orbit.
Venus is often called Earth's sister planet. For one thing, these two are almost the same size. Plus, Venus and Earth are very similar in mass and composition. Venus orbits the Sun within its Goldilocks, aka habitable, zone 2, just like Earth. But the differences between our home planet and Venus are more substantial than any similarities. For example, the atmosphere of Venus is 90 times as thick as what we have here on Earth. The surface temperature is so high you could melt lead there. And the air is toxic. It consists of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. In other words, if humans decided to move to Venus, Some serious terraforming, which is basically ecological engineering, would be needed first. And still, some scientists believe that Venus is an even better candidate for terraforming than Mars. And there are several suggestions on how to do it. One of the ideas involves the use of genetically engineered algae to fix carbon into organic compounds. Unfortunately, the more researchers study this method, the less plausible it becomes. The main problem is that the production of organic molecules from carbon dioxide needs hydrogen. But this element is extremely rare on Venus. This planet doesn't have a protective magnetosphere, and its upper atmosphere is exposed to direct erosion by the solar wind. That's why it has lost most of its original hydrogen to space. Also, any carbon that was bound up in organic molecules would be converted back into carbon dioxide in no time due to the ultra-hot surface environment. And Venus wouldn't even begin to cool down until after the removal of the largest part of carbon dioxide. The next idea was to bombard Venus's atmosphere with hydrogen. As a result, water and graphite would be produced. This water would fall down to the planet and cover almost 80% of its surface, forming vast oceans. To do it, we would need loads of hydrogen, so it would have to be harvested directly from one of our solar system's ice giants or their moons. This suggestion also involves iron aerosol getting added to the atmosphere of Venus. It could be derived from a number of sources, like the moon, asteroids, or Mercury. The resulting atmosphere would be around 3 bars, which is basically 3 times more surface pressure than on Earth. It would also mainly consist of nitrogen. With time, some of it would dissolve into new oceans, reducing atmospheric pressure even more. There's also an idea of solar shades. A series of small spacecraft or a single large lens might be used to divert sunlight from the planet's surface. This could probably reduce the insane temperatures on the planet. Venus absorbs twice as much sunlight as our planet. It's believed to have played a big role in the runaway greenhouse effect, which has made the planet what it is today. Such a shade could be based in space. This way, it would also serve to block the solar wind, thus reducing the amount of radiation the surface of Venus is exposed to. This radiation is a huge issue when it comes to the habitability of the planet. If this method indeed managed to cool Venus down, it would lead to atmospheric CO2, becoming liquid or frozen and getting deposited on the surface as dry ice. Solar reflectors could also be positioned in the atmosphere or on the surface of the planet. In this case, they could be large reflective balloons, sheets of carbon nanotubes or graphene, or something totally different. One of the coolest suggestions is to build cities above Venus's clouds. This way, they could act as both solar shields and as processing stations. The first colonists would live there, acting as terraformers, gradually converting the atmosphere of the planet into something livable. Later, they would migrate to the surface.
So Venus and Earth are so different that a foolish question like, what's longer, a day or a year, that makes absolutely no sense on Earth, totally makes sense on Venus. A day on Venus is indeed longer than a year. If we put it into Earth's perspective, a day on Venus would equal 243 Earth days, while a year would only last 225 days. So it's like your birthday is every day. Venus is often nicknamed Earth's evil twin. Their differences are so stark, you'd think they're from different galaxies altogether. Just to give you an idea of how far apart they are, if the day-to-year ratio wasn't enough, the Earth rises in the west on Venus but sets in the east. These days, one of the very few similarities between these two is their size. But try to imagine a time when Venus and Earth were like peas in a pod, besties since the beginning of the solar system. Venus used to be the life of the party. NASA scientists think Venus might have even hosted a liquid water ocean and surface temperatures that could have welcomed life for up to 2 billion years. But modern-day Venus is a different story. We're talking extreme temperatures and a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere. So, what led to this cosmic makeover? Size, location, and attitude. I mean that the distance from the Sun and internal heat played a huge role in shaping Venus and Earth's destinies. By the way, there used to be 3 siblings that could have hosted life: Venus, Earth, and Mars. Now imagine 3 cupcakes in an oven. Once they were fully baked, they were taken out of the oven. One of them was put in front of an open window in the middle of winter. Another was carefully placed on a table and covered with a nice clean kitchen towel. And the last one was accidentally forgotten and left in the oven. Oops. Mars, Earth, and Venus are like those cupcakes. Mars got too cold and not welcoming. Earth is still nice and warm and well protected from all the unpleasant things, just like the towel protects that lucky cupcake. And Venus got scorching hot and impossible to consume. In terms of development, Earth took the slow and steady route, maintaining its oceans, stable atmosphere, and biodiversity. Venus, on the other hand, cranked up the temperature, evaporated its oceans, and went all in with greenhouse gases. As a result, we have a planet where you'll melt faster than a snowman in July. Mars, on the contrary, will turn you into an ice popsicle within seconds. But chances are, it might have been pretty hospitable at some point. Some scientists believe that Mars used to be covered with flowing rivers and lakes and had no water shortages. Even today, Mars still has an ocean called Oceanus Borealis, or rather, the remains of what once used to be an ocean. It lost nearly all its water over time. Now, the sources of water on Mars include polar ice caps and minerals and rocks. According to estimates, only 1% of all that water evaporated, while 99% is still locked in the red planet. Ice polar caps are pretty simple to understand, as we have the same thing on Earth. But rocks containing water? Simple. There are at least 4 types of hydrous minerals on Mars. There are hydrous clays made of silicon oxygen, and the cool thing about them is that they can even contain magnesium and iron, which are sulfur-based hydrous sulfates. Now, don't you? I know you thought of the smell of rotten eggs. But it's typical of hydrogen sulfur and not just sulfur. These minerals have water incorporated right into their chemical formulas. There's also hydrous silica, which has water locked in its formula too. Scientists have experimented with growing plants using Martian-like conditions and found success with alfalfa. Harvesting alfalfa also helped improve the growth of other crops like turnips and lettuce. While water may be available on the red planet, the air on Mars is mostly carbon dioxide. On the bright side, and the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, the Mars Oxy, can produce oxygen on Mars, which could be crucial for future missions. As for energy sources on Mars, solar, wind, and geothermal energy are a few promising options. Solar power is less effective on Mars due to weaker sunlight and dust storms. But wind power and geothermal energy could serve as reliable alternatives. With these sources in place, humans could potentially sustain life on Mars. But let's get back to comparing our sibling planets. While both Mars and Earth have moons, and Mars even has 2 of them, Venus has 0, just like Mercury. Due to its proximity to the Sun and the star's gravitational pull, Mercury lacks the ability to retain its own moon. The likelihood of any moon orbiting Mercury either colliding with the planet or being drawn into the orbit of the Sun is high. That's all clear and understandable. But the absence of moons around Venus remains an unsolved puzzle for scientists. Despite Venus's scorching hot temperatures, scientists think that even today it might not be as hostile to life as we once thought. A recent MIT study found 19 amino acids surviving in a Venus-like solution for the whole month. Yep, some like it hot. Also, Rocket Lab and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology are teaming up to send an uncrewed spacecraft, Venus Life Finder, on a mission to Venus. This spacecraft will search for signs of life in the Venusian atmosphere using a special instrument called an autofluorescing nephelometer. And no, I didn't make that up. Originally set to launch in 2023, the mission is now pushed back to December 2024 with arrival at Venus in May 2025. The goal of the mission is to discover organic compounds in Venus's atmosphere, which could point to the possibility of habitable conditions in the cloud layer. The spacecraft is designed with a Photon Explorer cruise stage and a compact atmospheric probe equipped with that nephelometer thingy. The small probe will descend through the Venusian atmosphere, collecting data on cloud particles and organic compounds. In 2020, scientists made a big announcement about finding phosphine on Venus, a compound that could be linked to life. While they're still working on confirming this, using information from telescopes or even past missions, there might be evidence hidden in old NASA data received from Venus that could shed more light on the discovery. The potential presence of phosphine on Venus has stirred excitement and caution among scientists. To make sure, they need more data from telescopes or new space missions. If they find this gas, it might mean there is some form of life producing it in the planet's clouds. This discovery would be a huge step toward understanding Venus better. Some experts think that sending probes to Venus to directly detect phosphine would be the most effective way to confirm its presence. An 80s NASA mission may have already detected phosphine, but scientists back then didn't realize it. Now, this data is being re-evaluated to uncover any overlooked evidence of the presence of the gas. This could also suggest that the compound has been in Venus's atmosphere for decades, raising questions about its source. But not everyone is convinced of this interpretation, which evokes a debate among scientists about the true nature of the detected gases. Old data from other missions may also hold clues about phosphate on Venus. While new spacecraft are going to explore the planet, it's possible that the key to unlocking this mystery lies in decades-old mission records. In total, there have been 46 space missions to Venus, including some flybys where gravity lent a helping hand. The last time we successfully landed a spacecraft on Venus was way back in June 1985 as part of the Vega 2 mission. So, let's see what Venus Life Finder will discover.
In our solar system, most planets spin counterclockwise, but not Venus. This rebel planet decided to spin clockwise, and scientists are still trying to figure out why. By the way, why do planets rotate in general? What defines the speed of their rotation? Does the sun rotate? Buckle up and let's try to answer these questions. Venus is the second planet from the sun and the hottest planet in our solar system. Did you know that Venus is sometimes called Earth's twin? That's because it's similar in size and composition to our own planet. But that's where the similarities end, because Venus is a pretty crazy place, to say the least. For example, the weather. On Venus, it's always hot and cloudy. And when I say hot, I mean it like it's over 800 degrees Fahrenheit there. And those clouds? They're not made of water like the ones on Earth. Instead, they're made of sulfuric acid. So yeah, you wouldn't want to go outside without a really good sunscreen on Venus. If you look at the photos taken from its surface, you can see these toxic yellow clouds and cracked, desolate landscapes. And the spacecraft that captured this turned off almost immediately after sending these photos. Poor fella. But the surface of Venus isn't just some solid, dark, flat land. In fact, Venus has mountains that are taller than Mount Everest. These mountains aren't made of rock like the ones on Earth, though. Instead, they're made of a kind of volcanic material that's denser. Venus is a pretty creepy place that holds many mysteries. One of them has been puzzling scientists for years, and this is the planet's rotation. Most planets in our solar system rotate counterclockwise, but Venus isn't like the other girls. It rotates clockwise, and that's not all. It also rotates around the sun faster than it rotates around itself. In other words, a year on this planet passes faster than a day. It's almost like Venus made being quirky its life mission. But why is that? Well, scientists have a few theories. The most popular theory says that Venus was actually spinning counterclockwise like the other planets, but then something happened to flip it around. And what could that something be, you ask? A planet-sized object. Yep, astronomers believe that something huge once collided with Venus, causing it to spin in the opposite direction. You can imagine this like a cosmic billiard shot, with this mysterious huge object being the cue ball and Venus being the target ball. But we can't actually say that Venus is spinning the wrong way. There's no such thing as a wrong direction of spin in the universe. This is actually called the retrograde rotation. This is when a planet rotates in the opposite direction to its orbit around the Sun. Venus, for example, has a retrograde rotation, which means that the Sun rises in the west and sets in the east on that planet. So now, when the horoscope says something like Mercury in retrograde, you'll know what it means. Oh, but Venus isn't the only weird one in our solar system. There are definitely some wacky ways that planets can rotate. For example, most planets in our solar system spin around an imaginary line called an axis. This axis is usually straight up and down in relation to the planet's orbit around the Sun. However, some planets like Uranus have a tilted axis, which means it's almost on its side in relation to its orbit. This tilt causes the planet's poles to be nearly in the same place as its orbit. The result? As the planet orbits the Sun, different parts of it receive different amounts of sunlight, causing extreme seasonal variations. For example, one pole might experience continuous sunlight, while the other is in complete darkness for a long time. Uranus is the only planet in our solar system that rotates on its side. Scientists think that it could repeat Venus's history. Once upon a time, a large impact knocked Uranus off its original axis of rotation, causing it to tilt at an angle of 98 degrees. We should be grateful for Jupiter. Its crazy gravity pulls all the asteroids and protects us from such collisions. All this is somewhat similar to tidally locked planets. Imagine going on a date with a planet, but instead of being charming and mysterious like you'd hoped, it's just staring at you with the same face all night long. That's basically what it's like to hang out with a tidally locked planet. Tidally locked planets are planets that rotate around their axis at the same rate that they orbit their star. This means that the same side of the planet always faces the star, while the other side is in permanent darkness. Being tidally locked can have some weird effects on the planet's climate and weather. The side facing the star can become extremely hot, while the other side can be incredibly cold. The atmosphere on the planet can also get pretty wild, with strong winds blowing from the hot side to the cold side. And it doesn't have to be planets only. Our moon also works this way. Did you know that we always see only one side of the moon? That's because it's tidally locked to the Earth. We can also take the dwarf planet Pluto as an example. It has a strange rotational relationship with its largest moon, Charon. They're tidally locked, which means that they always face each other with the same side. As a result, Pluto and Charon appear to waltz around a common center of gravity, creating a unique dance in space. But the oddities of our solar system don't end there. There are also planets with super fast rotations. While most planets rotate at a fairly sedate pace, some of them are sonic levels fast. Jupiter, for example, rotates once every 9 hours and 56 minutes, which means that it has a day that's less than 10 hours long. That's fast enough to cause the planet to bulge out at its equator. And also, this rapid rotation creates strong bands of winds that can reach speeds of up to 400 miles per hour. And if all this still seems logical and kinda makes sense, then how about chaotic rotations? Yep, some planets have a rotation that's so irregular and unpredictable that it's known as chaotic rotation. This is often caused by the gravitational influence of nearby moons or other planets. And it's mostly the case with moons and small objects like that. In our solar system, some moons of Pluto, Saturn, and Neptune have chaotic rotation. By the way, the Sun rotates too, just like the planets. However, its rotation is not uniform. The equator rotates faster than the poles. Pretty weird, isn't it? This phenomenon creates a magnetic field that's responsible for phenomena like sunspots and solar flares. But all this raises an interesting topic. Why do planets rotate in the first place? This may sound like a silly question, but can you answer it? The answer might be trickier than you imagine. It all started around 4.5 billion years ago with the formation of our solar system. When it formed, it started as a large cloud of gas and dust. As the cloud began to contract due to its own gravity, it began to spin faster and faster, like a spinning top. This spinning motion caused the cloud to flatten into a disc-like shape. As the cloud continued to contract, the center became denser and hotter, eventually forming the sun. Meanwhile, the material in the disk began to clump together and form planets. But because the disk was already spinning, this spinning motion was inherited by the planets as they formed. In other words, the planets rotate by inertia. They inherited the spinning motion of the cloud of gas and dust from which they formed. This is known as the conservation of angular momentum. This is the same principle that causes ice skaters to spin faster when they bring their arms in. And that's a wrap on the wacky world of planet rotations. From the lightning-fast spin of Jupiter to the bizarre backwards rotation of Venus, it's clear that our solar system is full of surprises. But thanks to the laws of physics and the gravitational pull of the sun, these planets continue to spin on, keeping time with the steady beat of the cosmos. Stay tuned.
Venus has more volcanoes than any other planet in the solar system, more than 1,600. And a day on Venus, measured by how long it takes to rotate once on its axis, takes longer than the time it takes to complete a full orbit of the Sun. Wow! And that's just Monday. An extreme greenhouse effect warms the planet's surface up to 870 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. Winds there reach the speed of 450 miles per hour in the middle cloud layer, faster than the speediest tornadoes on our planet. The pressure on Venus's surface is 90 times higher than that at sea level on Earth. What a great place for a vacation, huh? And recently, this incredible place has become even more intriguing. In the toxic Venusian atmosphere, there's something that might mean the existence of life. Unfortunately, scientists haven't had a chance to collect any microbe specimens or snap any pictures of life there. But they've discovered a chemical called phosphine, and it's a big deal.
If it's not some previously unknown chemistry that produces the gas, then there must be a kind of microbial life involved in the process. Phosphine is made up of 3 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of phosphorus. This gas is toxic to any normal life form that needs oxygen, including us humans. On our planet, phosphine can be found in places with no or little oxygen, for example, marshes and swamps. The gas is created by complex mixtures of bacteria living there. It can also be produced industrially.
The weirdest thing is that phosphine isn't supposed to be in Venus's atmosphere at all. This gas needs precise pressure and temperature and tons of hydrogen to form. It wouldn't be all that surprising to find it on Saturn or Jupiter, the famous gas giants, but on Venus, totally unexpected. There's no way phosphine can be produced naturally on this planet. Tiny amounts of it can be created during volcanic eruptions, lightning storms, minerals blown up to the surface, or meteorites entering Venus's atmosphere. But it's not nearly enough to explain what the astronomers have observed. It would only make 1/10,000th of the phosphine the telescope saw.
But let's start from the very beginning. In 2017, a group of scientists led by Jane Greaves from Cardiff University started to use the James Clerk Maxwell Radio Telescope in Hawaii. That's a mouthful. The main idea was to search for phosphine gas. It would be a sign of life on Venus. When the data came back and the researchers analyzed it, they were shocked. The phosphine signal was powerful. The team checked the results several times. They wanted to make sure no other substance mimicked the presence of phosphine gas.
So now, does it mean there's life on Venus? Well, not necessarily. If this gas is created by some mysterious organisms, it's a big question how they survive on Venus. On our planet, some microbes can thrive in the environments with the acidity of 5%, but no more. On Venus, though, clouds are almost entirely made of acid. And even though they have a rather pleasant temperature of 86 degrees Fahrenheit, these clouds contain more than 90% of sulfuric acid, DNA, amino acids, proteins, life components on Earth would be dissolved there in the blink of an eye. The surface of the planet is too hot for any kind of complex molecules to make up life. The Venusian atmosphere is almost 50 times as dry as the driest place on our home planet. There's a theory that microbes might hide in scarce water droplets floating in the atmosphere, but it hasn't been proved yet.
Right now, the research team's waiting for more telescope time. They're going to look for other gases associated with life. But even if they find more evidence, life forms on Venus will be made up of building blocks absolutely different than those on Earth. Or they might be protected by a sulfuric acid-resistant shell. It can be made of such substances as sulfur, wax, graphite, or something else we can't imagine.
Of course, some experts question the idea of life on Venus. They think the gas might be produced during some geologic or atmospheric processes happening on the planet. But the supporters of both theories agree on one thing: the discovery is extraordinary. Interestingly, astronomers have always tried to find signs of life on giant planets' icy moons, or even closer, on Mars. But they've never seriously considered Venus. If additional telescope observations and future space missions confirm that phosphine is produced by living organisms, we can be in for a bunch of exciting surprises. Then people would know of a planet with an alien biosphere, well, alien to us, and this planet would be just next door to Earth. Now, speaking of visiting Venus, though, would it be possible for people to land on this planet? After all, robots are already tooling around the red planet surface. On the pro side, Venus is closer to Earth than Mars, but it also has much harsher conditions. The planet is hotter than Mercury, even though Venus is almost double the distance from the Sun. The temperatures are higher than the melting point of many metals, and some of them, like lead or bismuth, can fall as snow on the highest mountain peaks. If you set foot on the planet, you'll find nothing but barren rock. Giant basaltic plains are littered with volcanoes and mountains. In some places, the surface melts because of the heat underneath. After it releases some of it, the rock solidifies again.
If people ever go to this planet, they will most likely build floating cities in the clouds of Venus's atmosphere. At about 31 miles above the surface, the conditions, like the pressure and gravity, are similar to those on Earth. The temperature is rather manageable too, at around 167 degrees Fahrenheit. Think Death Valley, California on a really hot day. The atmospheric pressure is half of what we have at sea level on our planet. If you went outside, you'd be fine without a pressure suit. The pressure you'd feel would be the same as at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Plus, this colony would be protected from the sun's radiation better than one on Mars.
If the atmosphere was the mission's final destination, landing a spacecraft, or rather making it hover in the air, would look very different. The idea is to use an airship in the upper atmosphere for long periods of time. The airship, wrapped in an aeroshell, would enter the planet's atmosphere at a speed of 24,000 feet per second. In the next 7 minutes, its speed would drop to around 1,500 feet per second. After that, a huge parachute would open. It would slow the spacecraft down even more, and then things would get a bit hectic. The aeroshell, not needed anymore, would drop away. The airship would then inflate itself, all the while hurtling through the atmosphere toward the planet's surface. Its speed would be at least 330 feet per second. It would get larger and larger, and its drag and lift would increase. Soon, the parachute wouldn't be needed anymore. The crew would get rid of it, and the airship would fill with air completely. If everything went as planned, it would stop 30 miles above Venus's surface. After that, the airship would travel around the planet. It would be moved by the wind, which can reach a speed of 220 miles per hour at the top of the cloud layer. If you decided to move closer to the surface, though, you'd have to be extremely careful. The wind in the middle layer can get twice faster. The airship could be filled with a breathable mixture of hydrogen and oxygen gases. Such a combination would be less dense than the Venusian atmosphere. It would provide the needed buoyancy, to stay up there. Venus is famous for its super dense clouds. These clouds make the planet shine bright enough to be seen from Earth. Venus reflects more than 75% of the light that comes from the Sun. This reflective cloud layer exists thanks to a haze of sulfuric acid droplets in the atmosphere. and they gather exactly at the height where the airship would float. Luckily, people already have a method to overcome the problem of acidity. A few materials, for example Teflon and some types of plastic, have an amazing acidic resistance. They could protect the outsides of the ship. So, let's say you needed to work on a platform outside. Then you'd be able to do it, wearing only a chemical hazard suit and carrying necessary oxygen supply. Ooh, sounds like fun, huh? Yeah, me neither.
What if I told you that humans could have evolved on a planet other than Earth? And we're not talking about Mars here. This planet is Venus, one of the most toxic and dangerous places in our solar system. But imagine this. Once upon a time, Venus was a happening place for potential life. And maybe, just maybe, life was there. How is that possible? And what happened? Let's figure it out. Picture this, a planet swathed in clouds and named after a deity of love and beauty, Aphrodite. Sounds enchanting, right? But don't be fooled. Venus, our neighbor, is the second planet from the Sun, and it's no picnic. Its surface is hot enough to melt lead, and the atmosphere is so thick that the Sun is just a blurry smudge. As you get closer to it, things turn from dreamy to downright hellish. About 30 miles up in the atmosphere, temperatures range from 86 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is just the beginning. To survive on Venus, you'd need super-duper insulation, because temperatures can reach a sizzling 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, the weight of the atmosphere would bear down on you like being submerged deep in the ocean. The atmosphere is mostly made of carbon dioxide, and down at the surface, it behaves in a corrosive way due to the intense heat and pressure. The sky is sulfur yellow, and the clouds are composed of sulfuric acid. The surface is filled with active volcanoes and craters. Yikes! It's like the environment itself turns against you. Venus is often referred to as the Earth's twin. That's because Venus is almost as big as Earth, just a tad smaller, and these two planets look quite similar on the inside. But in reality, Venus is more like Earth's opposite than its twin. It spins in the opposite direction, has longer days than years, and has no seasons to speak of, not even mentioning its crazy weather conditions. But believe it or not, it wasn't always this way. A long time ago, around 3 billion years after it was born, Venus might have been a watery wonderland like our beloved Earth. It had a cozy climate, and researchers think there was even enough time for life to emerge. But how do we know that? Back in 1978, NASA's Pioneer Venus spacecraft discovered hints that Venus might have had oceans on its surface. Since then, scientists have sent more missions to explore the planet, and they've learned some fascinating things about its past. NASA researchers have come up with 5 cool simulations to show what Venus was like with different amounts of water covering its surface. To create these simulations, scientists used a fancy 3D model that takes into account the gases in Venus's atmosphere billions of years ago and how they are now. They also considered how the sun's radiation has changed over time, getting warmer as it ages. And it turns out that Venus used to be a lot like Earth. All simulations suggest that Venus could have had stable temperatures, ranging from a comfy 68 degrees Fahrenheit to a toasty 122 degrees Fahrenheit. In some of the simulations, Venus had a similar landscape to what it has now, with a shallow ocean and some water trapped in the soil. In others, they imagined Venus having a deep ocean or even the entire surface covered in water. Surprisingly, in all these scenarios, Venus could have maintained temperatures suitable for liquid water. Now, imagine a parallel universe where Venus stayed this way. What if things turned out differently and it was still as cozy as Earth? It could have been the perfect place for humans. Its oceans would have provided a nurturing environment for life to flourish and evolve. The temperatures would have been like a perpetual springtime picnic. Can you imagine lounging under a Venusian palm tree, sipping Venusian lemonade? Ah, the good life. Also, Venus had a slow rotation compared to Earth. Days would have stretched out, giving us more time to enjoy life's simple pleasures. Instead of 24 hours, a Venusian day might have lasted for months. You could have taken an extended vacation and still had time for a full makeover. And what about the higher atmospheric pressure? It may sound intimidating, but it could have actually worked in our favor. The higher pressure would have provided a cozy and snug environment, like being wrapped in a warm, fluffy blanket. No need to worry about the chilly winds of other planets. Venus would have had us covered. Oh, and remember the acidic atmosphere? It may sound strange, but it would have had its benefits too. Venus would have been a carbon dioxide-loving paradise. Plant life would have thrived, creating lush landscapes and filling the air with fresh oxygen. So in this scenario, Venus could have been our haven among the stars. So what happened? What has ruined Venus? Unfortunately, everything changed about 700 million years ago. There was a huge event that caused Venus to change completely, turning it into the hostile place it is today. It experienced a runaway greenhouse effect, which made its atmosphere super thick and scorching hot. A runaway greenhouse effect sucked all the water into space, leaving behind a scorching surface of volcanic rock with thick, crushing atmosphere and acid clouds. Yikes. So what caused this catastrophic transformation? Well, our experts believe it may have been due to volcanic activity. When magma and molten rock reached the surface, they released a bunch of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. If the magma cooled before reaching the surface, it created a barrier that prevented the gas from being reabsorbed. Massive amounts of gas were released into the atmosphere. Something similar happened on Earth with the Siberian traps, which caused a mass extinction. Venus had its own mega transformation. So, unfortunately, this catastrophe changed the history of our solar system once and forever. But here's the fascinating part. This little mysterious planet still could teach us a lot about the origins of life. For example, if Venus was once habitable, it opens up exciting possibilities for exoplanets in the Venus zone of other star systems. Maybe they could support life too. There's also a critical question that scientists ponder. How do these life-friendly worlds come into existence? Early on, Venus and Earth were strikingly similar. They were close in size, had similar structures inside, and even had oceans in their youthful days. But one planet turned into a scorching inferno, while the other became a thriving hub for abundant life. Why is that? And finally, believe it or not, we can't completely rule out the possibility of life on Venus even now. Up high in the thick yellow clouds where the temperature, air pressure, and chemistry are friendlier, there might be a chance. That's a range where earthly life, like tough extremophile microbes, could potentially survive. The atmospheric pressure up there is similar to what we experience on Earth's surface. We've even noticed strange dark patches in its atmosphere that come and go. Dark streaks persist, defying hurricane-force winds and absorbing ultraviolet radiation. Scientists are scratching their heads over these persistent streaks. They suspect they could be made of fine particles or ice crystals. But here's where it gets wild. Astrobiologists consider another option. Could these streaks be made up of Venus-style microbial life? They theorize that ring-shaped sulfur compounds in Venus's atmosphere could act as a protective coating for the microbes. Wouldn't that be amazing? That's why, by studying why Venus went down a different path in terms of habitability, we can unlock the secrets of what makes other worlds just right for life. However, there are still mysteries to solve. We need more missions to study Venus and understand its history better. For example, learn how quickly it cooled down after its formation. We also want to figure out if the transformation was a one-time cataclysm or a series of events over billions of years. Nonetheless, we can still dream of the Venus that could have been. A paradise where humans and Venusians could have lived side by side. So keep your eyes on Venus. It's a wild planet with a captivating history. Who knows what other surprises it has in store for us? Let's keep exploring and reaching for the stars.
In 2020, scientists studied Venus's surface. This planet has a similar atmosphere to Earth. That's why it's so interesting to people. During studies, they discovered there's phosphine in the surrounding gases of this planet. This substance has organic compounds, phosphorus, with carbon or hydrogen combination. This was an important discovery because the colorless, poisonous phosphine may have a biological origin. On Venus, the recent volcanic activity can be a reason for the appearance of this gas. But it's also possible that some bacteria really live there. Now let's move from Venus to Earth to the Falkland Islands. Beautiful Gentoo penguins live here. Scientists took samples of the penguins' excretion for studying. In the lab, they analyzed the Gentoo's doo-doo and found phosphine there. This discovery shocked everyone. How did the substance that exists 38 million miles away from us got inside penguins? It's hard to believe, but what if these unusual birds came to us from Venus? Maybe they often raise their heads up to see their faraway home in the starry sky. Penguins are rare birds that can turn saltwater into freshwater inside their body. There are unique glands next to their eyes that work as powerful kidneys. It allows penguins to remove salt from the bloodstream. So maybe this same gland can help them survive on Venus in some way. Penguins can't fly only on our planet. But just imagine Venus's atmosphere is perfect for flights. It's possible that millions of penguins are flying on Venus right now. We just can't see them because of the gases covering this planet. Of course, it's unlikely that this theory will find confirmation. Penguins would hardly be able to survive in Venus's atmosphere, which is 96% composed of carbon dioxide. There's also a small amount of sulfuric acid clouds on this planet. But scientists still don't know how the bodies of these birds can produce phosphine. They plan to conduct a thorough study and observe the behavior of Gen 2 penguins. They need to know what the birds eat, what kind of lifestyle they lead, and much more. After the study, scientists hope the penguin phosphine will help identify many different organisms living on other planets. It's possible that inside the penguins, certain anaerobic bacteria produce phosphine to fight other competing microbes. Traces of phosphine can also be found in pond slime on our planet. In the future, scientists are going to send several probes to Venus to explore the planet's atmosphere and find the source of phosphine. There's another animal that may be from another planet. No, not me. This time, it lives in seas and oceans. In 2018, a scientific article was published where a group of researchers stated octopuses were not born on Earth. And this is not a metaphor. They literally called them creatures from outer space. And in fact, there are several reasons to think so. One of the hypotheses says that viruses from other worlds fell into the Earth's ocean and infected squid with shellfish, and forced them to evolve into octopuses. Another theory says the octopus's eggs were brought to our planet on a meteorite. All these versions appeared because of how unique the octopus is. These sea creatures are closely related to snails, mollusks, and squids. But octopuses are much smarter. They are the smartest invertebrates on the planet. Their intellectual abilities are also superior to many mammals, including some guys I went to school with. They have one of the most complex nervous systems of all living organisms. Octopuses have a central brain in their body, and their tentacles are endowed with a neural connection that allows them to think separately from the central mind. Their vision is developed in such a way that their eyes can be compared to the lens of an expensive video camera. They can change color and shape, disguise themselves with a combination of color pigment, nerves, and muscles. But the coolest thing is their intelligence. They can relax and do nothing, be lazy, and have fun. No other creature on the planet has such an unusual appearance and behavior. But the main reason to consider them as aliens from outer space is their history of evolution. In any existing animal, you can track its evolutionary stages of development. For example, elephants and mammoths descended from a common ancestor from the elephant family that went extinct 5 to 6 million years ago. If you look even further, you see almost all mammals descended from animal-like reptiles. Almost every animal has a branch of evolution that has made it what it is. Each species changes over millions of years. But octopuses don't have this branch. They suddenly appeared on the family tree. From the point of view of evolution, squid should evolve into octopuses in millions of years. But scientists can't track the evolution of octopuses with all their intelligence, their tentacles, and their ability to disguise themselves. The octopus genome is unlike any other genome on the planet. If the outer space origin of octopuses turns out to be real, it could confirm the theory opposite to Darwin's evolution. According to this theory, living organisms or their embryos were brought to Earth from outside on meteorites. But for now, there's no evidence to support this theory. Some scientists believe that octopuses separated from the squid line about 135 million years ago. But this theory hasn't been proven either. But if octopuses came to us from outer space, how is it possible that living organisms survived an interstellar voyage? In fact, this is not impossible. There are creatures on Earth that can survive in space, and these are tardigrades or water bears. These are microscopic 8-legged invertebrates close to arthropods. You need a microscope to see them, but even a cheap one will let you see them in detail. From the outside, they look somewhat like bears. They are called water bears because they require a thin layer of water around the body to prevent dehydration. These creatures have been found in all kinds of environments, from the depths of the ocean to hot sand dunes. They are incredibly tenacious thanks to their unique structure. They look soft, but their body is covered with a hard cuticle. This covering resembles the exoskeleton of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed the old cuticle layer to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The tardigrades manage to survive at a temperature of minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit. This is almost 3 times colder than in icy Antarctica. Hot conditions aren't a problem for them either. They have survived a temperature of 300 degrees Fahrenheit. This means they exist in boiling water. Water bears aren't afraid of radiation or high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of strong metals. The water bear can withstand pressure 6 times heavier. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field, that is, a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't care about this radiation. They can go into low Earth orbit and return unharmed. Their body strength is provided by a protein that protects their DNA from ionizing radiation. Tardigrades can also fall into a state of cryptobiosis. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, lack of oxygen, or an overabundance of salt, the tardigrade pulls its head and legs inside the body and falls asleep. It can stay in the form of an unmoving barrel until the conditions around it improve. This state of cryptobiosis allows them to live without water and food for decades. In 2016, scientists managed to revive 2 tardigrades that had been sleeping for more than 30 years. These creatures have survived 5 global catastrophes on Earth. They appeared about 5 billion years ago, and it's possible they'll live just as long. They aren't afraid of any apocalypses. Asteroids hit our planet, a supernova explodes nearby, and its radiation splashes out on Earth. A global heat or ice storm starts. People and most living creatures may not survive these events, but the water bears can.
These days, you're better off boarding a plane if you want to travel from New York to London. But what if I told you there was a time when these 2 cities were actually on the same continent? Well, the explanation is a bit more complex. For starters, back then, these 2 cities didn't even exist at all. But the tectonic plates they sit on today were a lot closer. Nearly 200 million years ago, all of the continents on our planet connected, making up one large supercontinent. This enormous piece of land was surrounded by one single ocean. We call this huge continent Pangaea these days. Some parts of this continent broke apart and shifted away from each other for our maps to reach their current configuration. There's even a nice experiment you can conduct to test this theory. Find a map online and print it on a piece of paper. After that, simply cut out all of the continents. Once you start playing around with them, you'll soon notice they all seem to fit together, like pieces from a puzzle. Probably the most striking thing you'll see is how South America perfectly fits Africa. What's even more fascinating is that this isn't the first time in our planet's history that supercontinents have been formed and then broken apart. Scientists have figured out that this happened at least 3 times before. And if we consider our planet's age, 4.5 billion years, the last 200 million is closer to the blink of an eye. So how did scientists figure out that continents move? Apart from the aspect of today's continents, they also looked at identical rocks, which have been found on different continents. They looked like they formed from the same minerals and under the same weather conditions. Some other secret helpers? Well, dinosaurs. Fossils from the same species have been stumbled upon in both South America and Africa. This particular dinosaur, named Mesosaurus, is said to have lived on our planet way before the continents drifted apart. It's hard to imagine how life on Earth must have been with one single continent. For starters, the climate must have been very different. That's because the mid-portion of the land would have probably been bone dry, having little to no source of water. More so, it was most likely hidden away behind many mountain chains. These would have acted as a barrier against moisture and rainfall too. However, geologists have also studied coal deposits from the United States and Europe. These seem to show that at least a part of the ancient supercontinent, which was close to the equator, must have been an amazing tropical rainforest, just like those we can find in the Amazonian jungle today. Coal appears when remnants of plants and animals get stuck into swampy water. If enough pressure is applied by the water, the substance is first turned into peat, then into coal. Our planet existed in this continental configuration for over 100 million years, and during this time, there was a lot of life on Earth already thriving. Hey, it was a great time to be an insect. Critters like beetles and dragonflies flourished. During the same time period, the Earth was roamed by the predecessor of all mammals, the synapsid. Life in Pangaea was severely hit during one not-so-great period. It's believed that a comet or asteroid landed on the surface of the Earth about 251 million years ago. The asteroid or comet theory seems to fit pretty well because 90% of all marine animals and 70% of the creatures living on land disappeared all of a sudden. The comet might not have been the only reason for the mass extinction. At the same time, there was also some important volcanic activity happening in northern Asia, which might have disrupted life on Earth. We may not notice it, but continents do continue moving as we speak. This configuration we now see with the help of satellite imagery will surely not be the last. Australia, for example, is slowly moving towards Asia. But the most important proof that our continents are still shifting is the eastern portion of Africa. This area is simply breaking off from the rest of the land. To witness this, you'll have to travel to one of the hottest places on our planet. But if you get to this piece of land on the eastern part of the African continent, you might sit on top of the exact spot that, soon enough, will be split in two by water. Underneath this region, 3 tectonic plates are slowly drifting apart. If the data is correct, in the far future, Africa will be split in 2, and between its 2 regions, a new ocean will arise. To support this theory, scientists have been closely studying a 35-mile-long crack in the Ethiopian desert for years. For this new ocean to form, it's estimated that 5 to 10 million years need to pass. Since our planet's crust is made out of multiple tectonic plates that are constantly moving, it's the perfect place to study this process. These plates are all irregularly shaped, and they are always mashing against, sliding under, or over each other. Those 3 tectonic plates found under the desert are also moving at different speeds. One of them, called the Arabian Plate, is sliding away from Africa at a speed of about 1 inch per year. The other 2 plates are moving a bit slower, somewhere between ½ an inch to 0.2 inches each year. More so, as these movements happen, material from deep inside Earth climbs to the surface and forms an oceanic crust at the edges. All this movement does make you wonder, how will the next supercontinent form, and when? So far, scientists came up with some possible configurations, each with its own name: Novo Pangaea, Pangaea Ultima, or Amasia. All these predictions still vary, as we're not sure how and why continents really move over time. One clue may be actually looking at how Pangaea separated in the first place. Regardless, it will take anywhere from 15 to 100 million years to see the next future continent, depending on each scenario. Novo Pangaea looks at the possibility in which present-day movements continue. In this scenario, the Atlantic Ocean will continue to expand, all the while making the Pacific smaller. The 2 American continents would first combine northward. Africa, Europe, and Asia will have already combined too, by the time they all meet together in one single huge piece of land.
Another possible scenario is called Pangea Ultima. In this case, the Atlantic will slow down in its expansion and actually become a landlocked body of water. North America, Africa, Asia, and Europe would become somewhat parallel pieces of land, completely sewn together. Underneath them, South America, Antarctica, and Australia would complete the circle surrounding the North Atlantic. All the while, this piece of land would be surrounded by a large Pacific Ocean. Asia looks at a scenario that's a bit difficult to understand and study at this point. Since several tectonic plates look like they are moving north, it might be possible that all continents, apart from Antarctica, will slide completely toward the North Pole. The climate would be a lot different and way colder. Both the Pacific and the Atlantic, in this scenario, would remain open bodies of water. Scientists believe this to be a real possibility because of some anomalies left by Pangea deep in the Earth's interior in the part called the mantle. Looking even further into our planet's future, it's estimated that in about 1 billion years, the luminosity of the sun will be somewhere around 10% higher. As such, the atmosphere on Earth will closely resemble that of a moist greenhouse. Because of the added heat, all the bodies of water on our planet will start to rapidly evaporate. Moving further to 4 billion years from now, the temperature on our planet will soon transform it into a Venus look-alike. It might get so hot that the Earth's surface will begin to melt away.
An air traffic controller registers a distress call from a commercial pilot. Another call and one more. All of the calls report the same, an unidentified flying object. These alleged sightings happened between Saturday, December the 7th, and Sunday. Pilots were claiming they had seen numerous mysterious flying objects and lights over Eugene, Oregon. After Live8c.net, which broadcasts air traffic control transmissions, published the audio recordings of the pilots' reports, this news went viral on social media platforms. The Federal Aviation Administration confirmed the sightings a few days later. They said that a pilot had reported observing unidentified lights while flying in Seattle Air Route Traffic Control Center airspace. But at the same time, the FAA didn't confirm the authenticity of the audio, making the rounds on social media. Now, if you listen to the audio attentively, you'll find out that some object was registered by air traffic control collision avoidance systems. You can also hear air traffic control informing the pilot that no military activity had been happening in the area. At 8:39 p.m. on Saturday, a United Airlines pilot said on the transmission that the lights appeared just straight west of Eugene. They saw 3 or 4 of them. What shocked the United Flight 1596 pilot the most was that the lights were all altitudes up and down, which was pretty crazy. The National UFO Reporting Center also got a report, this time from a different pilot. He overheard the chatter over air traffic control channels while landing the plane. That pilot confirmed the sightings reported over Eugene around 8:40 p.m. Soon after that, the pilot of a medical evacuation aircraft under tail number N661LF joined the conversation, announcing they had just seen another light. It zipped toward the plane and then dashed back out toward the ocean. According to the pilot's statement, the light was red and moving at an extreme speed. After receiving all these reports, air traffic control realized they needed to act fast, so they started instructing the pilots to do everything they could to avoid a collision. They cleared the planes to maneuver as necessary, left or right, to steer clear of the UFO out there. Fast forward to the following Friday, December 13th. Life Flight Network issued the following statement. On Saturday evening, December 7th, during a routine flight near Eugene, Oregon, one of our crews observed an unusual moving light in the sky. We can confirm that it was one of our pilots on the ATC recording that has been widely distributed over the last couple of days. While the nature of the light remains unidentified, at no time did it pose any safety risk to our aircraft or crew. Neither Life Flight Network nor our crew, though, are speculating about the origin or nature of the light, and our focus remains on the safe and efficient operation of our services. But the main question remains, were those bizarre moving lights alien spaceships? Well, the UFO Reporting Center doesn't support this idea. They claim that sightings like these are common, but they probably don't involve extraterrestrials visiting us. They might actually be SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet constellation. The thing is, at first, Starlink satellites move in a perfectly straight line, and most pilots know what such bright lights are and can identify them. But when the satellites get to their destination point where they're supposed to get into their final orbits, they begin moving around, doing maneuvers. That's when they can form weird formations. Often, those are shaped as triangles. Plus, these satellites can move back and forth and create patterns. Honestly, they can look pretty eerie, and tons of pilots don't know about that. So, when Starlink satellites rise high into the sky, loads of pilots report them as UFOs. J. Allen Hynek, an astrophysicist and ufologist, coined the term close encounter, or CE, in his book The UFO Experience, A Scientific Inquiry, published in 1972. He defined a CE as experiences where a person witnesses an unidentified flying object at a relatively short distance, reducing the likelihood of perceptual errors. Hynek introduced a rigorous classification system widely recognized as the Hynek scale, and it's one of the most significant contributions to ufology. The classification includes 6 categories, but only 3 are considered close encounters. The distinction between distant and close encounters lies in the observer's proximity. Events occurring within 150 meters are classified as close. To better visualize the scale, think of it as a staircase, where each step brings us closer to the unknown. The first 3 steps of the classification involve phenomena observed at distances greater than 150 meters. Nocturnal lights refer to unusual lights observed at night, often red, blue, orange, or white, with unexpected movements or speeds. Daylight discs are objects seen during the day, typically disc-shaped or oval. Radar visual phenomena involve UAPs confirmed by radar, which, while adding credibility, can sometimes be attributed to atmospheric anomalies. Steps 4, 5, and 6 are classified as close encounters, made famous by Steven Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which references Hynek's work. A close encounter of the first kind involves sightings of strange flying objects within 150 meters. At this distance, observers can discern details that would be impossible to detect from farther away. Close encounters of the second kind are more unsettling and involve physical effects on the observer's surroundings, such as interference with devices, unusual animal behavior, or physiological effects like paralysis or heat. Evidence might include scorched vegetation, chemical traces, or other inexplicable marks. These incidents suggest that while the object might go unnoticed by the naked eye, its presence leaves a tangible impact. Finally, the 6th step involves the close encounters of the third kind, the most intriguing of all, involving direct interaction with beings from space. Hynek described these beings as animated entities, which could include robots, humanoids, or humans appearing to be UFO pilots. After Hynek's death, fellow researcher Jacques Vallée expanded the scale in his 90s book Confrontations, a scientist's search for alien contact, adding 2 more steps, which were quickly embraced by the community. These are the 4th kind and 5th kind. The close encounters of the 4th kind are known as abductions, and also include episodes of transformation of the sense of reality, such as vivid hallucinations or dreamlike episodes related to UFOs. This also inspired the title and content of the science fiction movie The 4th Kind by Olatunde Osunsanmi. At the top of the staircase, we have the close encounters of the 5th kind. They occur when humans initiate contact with extraterrestrial beings, typically following specific protocols. Some interpret this step as involving physical effects from the encounter, such as injuries or unexplained healings. Over time, the 5th kind has become associated with direct communication between humans and aliens, emphasizing a mutual exchange. Now, this is no joke. Many individuals consider themselves contactees due to experiencing extraterrestrial encounters. Hynek described these contactees as recipients of messages of cosmic importance from usually benevolent beings. These beings often convey peaceful messages aimed at helping humanity resolve conflicts. Contactees often report recurring experiences and additional messages. From the 1940s to the 1960s, contactees became a cultural phenomenon, writing books and giving lectures. Skeptics often dismiss them as dishonest or influenced by false memories, hallucinations, or a lack of scientific understanding. Whether fact or fiction, contactees consistently describe aliens as humanoid beings delivering messages against violence, crime, and nuclear weapons. They portray them as striving to help humanity achieve peace and unity. Their reports often include men in black, mysterious figures allegedly working to suppress these messages. Sound familiar? It's no coincidence that this idea inspired the popular movie franchise. Have you ever experienced any of Hynek's steps? Or heard a blood-chilling story from somebody close to you? Let us know in the comments. And if you're curious about why beings from other planets might be observing us, well, we have some videos about that too. Many famous people have believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life and aliens visiting us. Hillary Clinton, for example, shifted her focus to UFOs and Area 51 during her 2016 presidential campaign. Area 51, a restricted military base in the Nevada desert, about 80 miles from Las Vegas, has been the center of numerous conspiracy theories. Many believe the site is used to study alien technology from UFO crashes. Singer Nick Jonas once shared his experience of seeing something unusual in the sky while hanging out in his backyard in Los Angeles. He noticed 3 flying saucers and asked his friend if they were seeing the same thing. Curious, he looked online and found 3 similar sightings reported 2 weeks earlier. The US Navy later explained that the strange lights were part of a Trident missile test. However, Jonas, who is fascinated by UFOs, remains intrigued. He described the mysterious blue light as both unsettling and fascinating. Singer Kesha's strong belief in alien life even inspired her 2017 album Rainbow, which includes a song titled Spaceship. It all started after she had a bizarre encounter while camping in California's Joshua Tree National Park. The singer spoke about spotting several UFOs hovering in the sky. 5 to 7 spacecraft appeared, vanished, and then returned. The strange sight convinced her that they were alien spaceships. Singer Ariana Grande once described herself as obsessed with the idea of extraterrestrial life. In a 2013 interview with Complex magazine, she spoke about the unlikelihood of humans being the only intelligent beings in the universe. Her interest in aliens even influenced her creative work. For example, in the music video for her song Break Free, you can see battling aliens. Grande also mentioned that while she has not encountered extraterrestrials, she did have an unsettling experience involving ghosts and demons at a haunted castle in Kansas City. Miley Cyrus has openly shared her experiences with UFOs too. One of her most notable encounters occurred while she was on tour, driving through rural California with a friend. During the drive, they claimed to see a UFO high in the sky that appeared to chase their car. Miley described the object as resembling a flying snowplow, with a glowing yellow plow at the front. She recalled seeing it clearly and noted that her friend and several other drivers on the road stopped to observe it as well. The experience left Miley unsettled for days as she struggled to process what she had seen. She also mentioned seeing a being seated at the front of the craft. She even made eye contact with this entity. The encounter was super unnerving, but Miley admitted she didn't feel threatened by it. Gillian Anderson, famous for her role as FBI Special Agent Dana Scully on The X-Files, has shared her thoughts on the possibility of alien life. While she spent years portraying a skeptic-turned-believer on the show, her real-life position is different. In an interview with The Guardian, the actress spoke about the vastness of the universe and questioned the likelihood of Earth being the only planet with living beings. She didn't say she was sure aliens existed, but considered it plausible. Winston Churchill is famous for leading Britain through tough times, but there's a lesser-known side to him, and it was his curiosity about aliens. Back in 1939, he wrote an 11-page essay about the possibility of life beyond Earth. In this essay, Churchill wondered if humanity was really that special. he questioned if Earth was the only place with intelligent beings, or if there could be others out there who might even be more advanced. It's pretty cool to think that even during such a chaotic time in history, Churchill was pondering the big questions about life in the universe. And finally, Stephen Hawking always warned us to be cautious about contacting aliens. In a 2016 documentary, he said that we might one day get a signal from a planet like Gliese 832c, but he advised being careful before responding, as it could be risky. It was the year 2015 when U.S. Navy pilots flying training missions off the East Coast saw something truly eerie. They spotted oval-shaped objects moving quickly over the water. They seemed to rotate as they flew. At first, the pilots thought it was just one object, but soon they realized there were many of them, moving in unusual ways. These objects didn't look like normal aircraft. They didn't have visible engines, didn't produce exhaust, and didn't just hover near the sea like helicopters would. Some of them appeared at altitudes of 30,000 feet and were moving faster than the speed of sound. The strangest and scariest thing? The pilots had been observing similar objects almost every day for months. Mind you, those weren't rookie pilots. One of them was an experienced pilot with 10 years in the Navy. He, along with his fellow pilots, knew what typical aircraft looked like and how to stay calm under pressure. It wasn't until 2019 that the public heard about those sightings. That's when the New York Times published an article revealing them. The article included video footage taken by the pilots' plane cameras, which was later confirmed by the U.S. Navy in April 2020. The Navy officially released the videos soon after. In recent years, sightings of UFOs, now called unexplained aerial phenomena, have been reported by other reliable sources as well. The U.S. government has started to take these sightings seriously and has even brought in scientists to quietly investigate what might be behind them. So far, we still don't know exactly what the pilots and others have seen. But this growing scientific interest is pushing us closer to finding out more. While military pilots reporting UFOs might be a recent development, the public has been observing and reporting them for decades. In fact, the UFO craze in the US can be traced back to the summer of 1947. On June 14th of that year, a rancher discovered strange debris on his land near Roswell, New Mexico. At first, he thought it was from a kite. But even after looking through the bits of rubber, tinfoil, paper, and wood, he still couldn't make sense of it. The rancher then told the local sheriff about his find. And since his ranch was close to the Roswell Army airfield, the sheriff reported it to the military. Officers came to check it out, and couldn't identify the wreckage either. The next day, the Army issued a press release saying that they had recovered the remains of a flying saucer. The local newspaper even ran a headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell." But just a few days later, the Army changed its story, claiming the debris was from a weather balloon. By then, though, the excitement over UFOs had already sparked, and UFO fever spread across the nation. Now, UFOs are real, in the sense that people have indeed seen objects they can't identify in the sky. But when people ask, are UFOs real? They usually mean, are we being visited by aliens? And science doesn't have an answer to that yet. After the Roswell incident, UFO sightings became more frequent. People made wild claims, saying they'd met aliens or even been abducted. These stories were mysterious and captivating. No wonder they gained traction. The government didn't help much since it was keeping its own secrets. Eventually, they admitted to hiding something, but it wasn't little green men from other planets. In 1995, the Air Force released a report explaining that the debris found on Brazel's ranch wasn't from a weather balloon, but from Project Mogul, a secret Cold War program that used balloons to detect missile launches of certain countries. As for the alien bodies people claim to have seen, they were crash test dummies used in experiments with ejection seats. In 2021, the US government released a brief report on UAPs, aka unexplained aerial phenomena, stating that they have found no evidence of aliens. At the same time, they acknowledged that many UAP sightings had been recorded since 2004, and those remained unexplained. According to the report, those sightings did not necessarily point to alien spacecraft. Some could be birds, debris like party balloons, secret military projects, or even new technology from other countries. In May 2022, Congress held a public hearing on UFOs, and high-ranking military officials testified there. They revealed that since 2021, 400 unexplained sightings had been documented, but none suggested extraterrestrial life. At the same time, there's more and more evidence hinting that Earth may not be the only place with life in the universe. Earth itself is 4.5 billion years old, and life emerged here around 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. Life on Earth began fairly quickly, which means that the process of life forming wasn't overly difficult. And if life could begin easily on Earth, it's likely that it could also start on many other planets in the universe. The Milky Way galaxy alone contains 1 trillion planets, and there may be trillions more in the universe. Given these numbers, there is a lot of potential for life elsewhere. However, just because there's a possibility of life elsewhere doesn't necessarily mean that aliens have visited Earth. That's why SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence researchers, are focused on detecting signs of life elsewhere in the universe, not on studying UFOs. For a long time, most scientists dismissed the study of UFOs as pseudoscience. That's why many researchers interested in UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, stayed silent to avoid being seen as eccentric. But this has started to change. In June 2022, NASA created a team of scientific experts to search for the unknown in air and space. The researchers suggested using NASA's huge amount of space data to assist in the study of UAPs. The team also made it clear that studies of UAPs should focus on evidence and data, not speculation. Instead of simply collecting stories or relying on accidental sightings, the researchers used telescopes to capture footage of the sky. They gather this data and then analyze it with the help of artificial intelligence. They plan to add more observatories, and over 100 scientists are already involved. Astrobiologist Julia DeMarines suggests that some UAP sightings could be caused by unusual weather conditions. For instance, spacecraft launched near sunset can create strange effects. The gases expelled by spacecraft reflect only the light reaching the upper atmosphere at that time. And since the sunlight remains reflective for a long period, such sightings can seem unexplainable. UAPs might also be caused by light reflecting off communication satellites. But could UAPs really be alien spaceships? People often expect first contact with alien life to be dramatic, but the reality might be more subtle. Our first encounter with alien life may actually be discovering their technology. For example, we might find a piece of space debris that didn't originate on Earth, like spotting an empty plastic bag blowing through space. We'd know it didn't come from Earth, but we wouldn't know where it came from. Another possibility is that the aliens we might encounter may no longer exist. In 1961, astronomer Frank Drake developed the Drake equation, which estimates how many alien civilizations might be capable of sending signals. The equation considers factors like the rate at which stars form and the number of planets capable of supporting life in a Goldilocks zone, a habitable zone located at the right distance from a star for water to remain a liquid. However, one key factor in the equation is represented by L, which stands for the length of time technological civilizations produce detectable signs of their existence. Humanity has only been technologically advanced for a little over 100 years, in a universe that is nearly 14 billion years old. It means that the timing for civilizations to overlap might be rare. Many civilizations might have existed before us, and many may come after us, but the chance that we overlap with theirs is slim. Despite this, some scientists believe that it won't be long before we find definitive evidence of alien life. There is hardly any other place as mysterious as Area 51, a highly classified U.S. Air Force military facility in Nevada. For a long time, the U.S. government didn't even admit it existed. It was shrouded in secrecy, causing all kinds of wild rumors. It wasn't until 2013 that they finally acknowledged both the base and the name Area 51, all thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request, a way regular people or organizations can officially ask the government to share information about what they're up to. What happens there is still super secret, The public is kept out with warning signs, electronic surveillance, and armed guards. Flying over Area 51 is also off limits, but these days, you can now see it on satellite images. The base even has massive runways, some as long as 12,000 feet. Area 51 has become the center of countless conspiracy theories because of its secretive nature and its ties to classified military projects. According to some of the most popular theories, it's used for storage, examination, and reverse engineering of alien spacecraft and the study of extraterrestrial beings. Other theories claim that joint projects with aliens are conducted there. Some ideas involve experiments in weather control, time travel, and teleportation, as well as work on exotic propulsion systems. Many of these theories focus on supposed underground facilities at Groom Lake or nearby Papoose Lake, known as S4. Some of the wilder claims include a secret underground railroad and a hidden airstrip that disappears when water is sprayed on it. In the mid-1950s, when civilian aircraft flew at lower altitudes and military aircraft like the U-2 flew higher, UFO sightings increased. Pilots often reported seeing strange objects, especially during the early evening when the U-2's reflective wings appeared to glow in the setting sun. The Air Force's Project Blue Book investigated many of these sightings, and while they couldn't explain everything, they did eliminate UFO reports caused by high-altitude aircraft. Their wide, disc-shaped fuselage and extreme speeds of over 2,000 miles per hour made them look otherworldly when reflecting sunlight. The rumors surrounding Area 51 probably contributed to keeping the base's operations shrouded in secrecy. In 1989, Bob Lazar claimed to have worked at a secret facility within Area 51 known as Sector 4, located underground near Papoose Lake in Nevada. He said that he had been hired to study alien spacecraft that had been recovered from a crash. According to him, he worked on a UFO that was powered by a mysterious element not found on Earth. In addition to Lazar, there was an interview with a 71-year-old mechanical engineer who claimed to have worked at Area 51 during the 1950s. He described working on a flying disc simulator based on a crashed extraterrestrial craft. He claimed that the simulator was used to train military pilots to fly alien technology. The engineer also mentioned interacting with an alien being called J-Rod, a telepathic translator. These claims added to the growing belief that Area 51 was not only a military testing facility, but also involved in extraterrestrial research. In 2004, Dan Crane claimed that he had worked at Area 51 on a project involving the cloning of alien viruses. He also asserted that he worked alongside J-Rod during his time at the facility. However, his academic credentials are unclear, and he was allegedly working as a parole officer in Las Vegas while claiming to be earning a PhD. In 2019, a viral Facebook event called for people to storm the base to see the aliens. It was named Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. They plan to rush the gates of Area 51 and force the government to reveal its secrets about extraterrestrials. The U.S. Air Force, however, strongly discouraged people from attempting to trespass, warning of legal consequences, and the storming of Area 51 never happened. New research suggests that Mars might have all the necessary conditions for the appearance of life. Does it mean aliens could be already waiting for us on the red planet? Let's figure it out. On Mars, there are just the right conditions for photosynthesis beneath dusty ice layers in its mid-latitudes. And photosynthesis, the process used by plants, algae, and cyanobacteria to turn light into chemical energy, requires water and sunlight. On Mars, a thick layer of ice might filter out harmful solar radiation while letting enough light through to enable photosynthesis, creating what researchers call radiative habitable zones. This doesn't mean that, at the moment, life exists or has ever existed on Mars. At the same time, the findings give scientists clues about where to search for potential signs of life. Both Earth and Mars lie within the Sun's habitable zone, where temperatures can support liquid water. But while our planet's surface is covered with huge oceans, Mars appears dry and desolate. Yet evidence from NASA missions like Curiosity and Perseverance suggests it wasn't always this way. Ancient lake beds and river channels show that water flowed on Mars billions of years ago. Today, water exists on Mars primarily as ice, often in surprising locations. Scientists believe Mars lost its liquid water when its magnetic field faded, which led to its atmosphere getting stripped away by solar winds. With little atmosphere left to trap heat, water vapor escaped into space, leaving the surface cold and dry. Without an ozone layer, Mars also faces intense ultraviolet radiation, which destroys the complex molecules essential for life. Mars gets about 30% more harmful UV radiation than Earth. But dusty ice layers could shield potential habitats from this radiation while still letting in enough sunlight for photosynthesis. Using computer simulations, researchers found that dust within Martian ice could cause it to melt from below, forming thin layers of liquid water. These pockets could be shielded from evaporation by the overlying ice, creating the two essential ingredients for photosynthesis: water and sunlight. Past studies also suggest that even small amounts of dust, less than 1%, in dense Martian snow, can enable melting in mid-latitudes. Observations of exposed dusty ice near Martian gullies also support the idea that these conditions could form shallow liquid water layers under the surface. At the same time, the amount of dust in the ice plays a critical role. Ice with too much dust blocks sunlight, while ice with just the right amount, from 0.01 to 0.1%, can create habitable zones at depths of 2 to 15 inches. Cleaner ice could allow these zones to form deeper, between 7 and 10 feet. As for Mars's polar regions, even though they're rich in ice, they are likely too cold for this melting to occur, making mid-latitudes a more promising target. Interestingly, similar habitats exist on Earth, providing an analog for what might happen on Mars. On Earth, cryoconite holes form when dust and sediment heat ice surfaces, melting them enough to create pockets of liquid water beneath. These translucent ice layers allow sunlight to go through, and researchers have discovered microorganisms living in these shallow subsurface environments. While they go dormant in winter, when sunlight returns in the summer, it reactivates these tiny ecosystems. While this research doesn't confirm the existence of life on Mars per se, it does open up new avenues for exploration. Understanding how dusty ice interacts with sunlight and melts could help identify potential habitable zones on the red planet. The research team is planning to refine their simulations to better pinpoint where and when melting might occur on Mars. They're also recreating these conditions in the lab to study them in greater detail. This work could provide important insights for future missions looking for signs of life on Mars. The United States Air Force came up with the term UFO, unidentified flying object, back in 1953, and over time, it's come to mean anything that might hint at aliens trying to contact us. There's an actual field called ufology, dedicated to studying these kinds of things. But there's an unexpected twist. The authorities don't really like the term UFO anymore. Instead, they've switched to calling them UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. It sure sounds more professional, doesn't it? It also kind of distances the term from decades of wild alien theories tied to UFOs. Now, if you're into UFOs or UAPs, this is actually a pretty exciting time. Back in December 2020, when the government passed a huge spending bill, there was a little clause tucked in there about UFOs. Basically, it called for more transparency and pushed agencies to share what they know. And shockingly, the CIA has recently dumped all of its declassified UFO documents online. That's 2,780 pages of material now available to the public, and you can find it all on a site called the Black Vault. It's run by John Greenewald Jr., a guy who's basically dedicated his life to collecting and sharing UFO-related info. But of course, getting those documents wasn't easy. Greenewald had to file over 10,000 Freedom of Information Act requests to pry them out of the government's hands. He says the whole process was like pulling teeth, and even now, the files aren't exactly user-friendly. They're in an outdated format, multi-page TIFF files, and the text scans are messy, making it hard to search through them. To help, Greenewald converted the whole collection into 713 PDFs. But even then, some of the documents were poorly photocopied, which made it tricky to dig into the details. Still, UFO fans have already uncovered some wild stuff. One document mentions a Bosnian fugitive claiming to have had contact with aliens. According to the document, at the time it was written, Radovan Karadzic remained alive, but the authorities didn't know where he was. The rumors of his near capture lacked evidence, and NATO countries blamed each other for failing to act. Critics saw the hunt for Karadzic as part of a political circus, with no real effort to bring him to justice. But the real question is whether they didn't want to, or just couldn't, because he wasn't on Earth anymore. Another document talks about mysterious explosions at midnight in a small Russian town. On the 12th of April, a powerful midnight explosion shook Sassovo, a small city in Russia's Ryazan region. The blast caused a lot of damage. It ripped off roofs, shattered windows, and rocked buildings like an earthquake. No one was seriously injured, but many people were shocked. Schools and kindergartens were closed, and buildings were temporarily patched with plastic sheeting. At the time when the document was written, the cause of the explosion was still a mystery. Theories ranged from buried World War II munitions, a falling air bomb, a meteorite, or a fiery UFO sighting reported by locals. Military experts suspected ammonium nitrate stored nearby, though this fertilizer had been safely used for years. A massive crater, 92 feet wide and 13 feet deep, was the only evidence of the disaster. One of the most intriguing finds is a 1970s document showing the Assistant Deputy Director for Science and Technology personally receiving some mysterious UFO-related info. But of course, like most government releases, a lot of the good stuff is blacked out. Greenewald still hopes and fights to get those redacted sections declassified. There must be something special about that information. As you see, digging into this data takes a lot of patience. You're basically wasting hours and hours of your life hoping to find something that stands out. But if you're still curious, check out the Black Vault. You might discover something mysterious and creepy in those thousands of pages.
In the vast abyss of the cosmos, amidst the stellar tapestry, lies the Milky Way, not just a river of stars, but our very abode. Envision a gargantuan pinwheel spanning eons, rotating in the void of space. A place born from time's earliest whispers, around 14 billion years ago. A dominion of starlight, nebulae, and cosmic wonders, housing not just celestial bodies but stories. Yours, mine, and even that untidy child from down the lane. Picture a canvas so wide, taking 100 millennia for a beam of light to traverse. Within it, our sun, a mere speck, takes 250 million years to complete its cosmic marathon around the galaxy's heart. And when night graces our world, those myriad twinkling eyes above, most are part of the Milky Way's sprawling limbs. This river of starlight was once an enigma to our ancestors, a milky stroke across the heavens, hence the galaxy's poetic name. But hold your breath for a twist in the tale. From the heart of this stellar expanse, a curious signal emanates. Like the dots and dashes of Morse code, there exists a mysterious message, perhaps a celestial whisper. Decades past, we spotted gigantic tendrils hanging ominously close to the enigmatic Sagittarius A*, our galaxy's heart, harboring a monstrous black hole. Recent revelations have unveiled new tendrils, puzzlingly shorter, their orientations odd, reminiscent of spokes radiating from a wheel's hub. Though the tendrils share common traits, their origins are believed to differ. Towering vertical ones pierce the cosmos, while the horizontal siblings evoke Morse code's eloquence, the former magnetic, while the latter exudes thermal warmth. These baffling phenomena, though celestial in scale, may help unveil the secrets of our galaxy's central black hole. Yet, the mysteries don't end there. From the depths came another signal, frequent pulsations, unlike any celestial body we know. Its origin? Ambiguous. Some speculated to be remnants of a collapsed star, while others pondered the existence of an entirely unknown celestial object. And as if the galaxy wasn't enigmatic enough, a new conundrum arises. Our gamma-ray telescope unveiled an intense glow from the Milky Way's core. For a decade, this luminescence baffled minds. Is it the cataclysmic destruction of elusive dark matter? Or is it the dance of millisecond pulsars, neutron stars spinning at unimaginable speeds? Debates rage, with the pulsars being prime suspects, yet skepticism abounds. Some postulate it could be due to cosmic interactions, while others question the peculiar spherical congregation of these pulsars. The galaxy, with all its grandeur, remains a labyrinth of riddles. All we can do is persist in our quest, diving deeper into the enigma that is our celestial home. Within this vast cosmic theater, every revelation begets more questions, and every answer we unearth draws us further into an intricate dance of wonder and uncertainty. Each star, each pulsar, every tendril is not just a point of light or a phenomenon, but a chapter in the grand tale of our universe. We, as humble residents of this Milky Way, are constantly driven by an insatiable curiosity. With every tool we forge and every telescope we peer through, we seek to understand our place in the vastness, to decipher the messages encoded in the fabric of space and time. These mysteries, from the Morse code-like tendrils to the inexplicable gamma rays, are beckoner of errors. It can perform boring and repetitive tasks instead of you. You've probably guessed that I'm talking about repetitive tasks instead of you. You've probably guessed that I'm talking about artificial intelligence. But what if I also told you that it has the potential to make humanity disappear? Leading computer scientists and technologists are worried. They believe AI poses a risk of extinction to our civilization. And it's so serious that the situation calls for global action. Experts claim that super-powerful AI systems can only be developed after we become confident that their effects will be positive and risks manageable. AI is advancing so fast these days that it has raised concerns about the potential negative consequences of such rapid development. They might range from mass job losses and copyright infringements to instability in different spheres and the spread of misinformation. There are also those who are afraid that people will one day lose control of the technology altogether. The thing is, current AI has yet to achieve AGI, which stands for Artificial General Intelligence. But once it reaches this stage, it will potentially be able to make independent decisions. And doesn't it sound truly terrifying? But the most alarming thing, researchers at Microsoft say that GPT-4 has shown sparks of AGI. It turned out to be capable of solving difficult tasks spanning math, coding, medicine, psychology, law, and many other fields. And it didn't need any particular prompting while doing this. So, are we on the road to superintelligence? And why are most people not worried about it? It might be because we are confused about the very term AI. Most people associate AI with sci-fi movies and don't realize it's our reality now. Nowadays, AI is a broad topic. It ranges from our smartphones to self-driving cars to something that can change our future dramatically and irrevocably. Let's clear things up. We should stop thinking of AI as robots. A robot is just a container for AI. Sometimes they might mimic the human form. Sometimes they don't. But AI itself is inside. AI is the brain, not the body, if it has any. Have you ever used, let's say, Siri? I bet if you're an iPhone owner, you have. So Siri is an AI, and the voice you hear is a personification of that AI. And guess what? There's no robot involved whatsoever. Now, back to the dangers AI might present. There's a chance that soon, AI chatbots will become more intelligent than humans. And then, AI may start, or be used, to generate misinformation capable of destabilizing society. In the worst-case scenario, however unrealistic it may sound, machines might become so intelligent that they will take over the world, which would lead to the extinction of humankind. There are other, no less pressing concerns. For example, AI could start playing a big role in making decisions affecting our lives. Imagine people becoming so dependent on AI that they can't live without its advice and guidance. They rely on it in all spheres of their lives, from buying groceries to choosing a vacation destination to picking a name for their child. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Lots of jobs, more than 300 million all over the world, will be and already are, at risk because of AI. It happens as certain tasks and job functions become automated. This tendency might also affect administrative jobs, the legal sphere, architecture, management, and more. At the same time, we must acknowledge that AI is beneficial for many sectors. Experts predict a 7% increase in global GDP thanks to it. For example, some areas of science and medicine are already taking advantage of AI, developing new medicines and treating some diseases. For the time being, countries are trying to pass special AI-related legislation. It's supposed to classify AI into 4 risk-based categories, deal with fakes, and make companies register their algorithms with regulators.
Brace yourself. You're about to hear one of the most unusual sounds ever. It's come from space, and it's the sound of 2 black holes colliding. But first things first. Our ears are designed in a special way, which helps us translate sound waves. But these sound waves become mute once the medium they're traveling through comes to an end. It happens when, for example, the atmosphere of Earth gives way to the vastness and emptiness of the cosmos. At the same time, there are some sound waves that can move even through a vacuum. And we can translate these vacuum-friendly waves into sounds our human ears can hear. That's kind of like radio transmissions work. Over the past few decades, people have sent quite many satellites to the far reaches of the solar system, and even beyond. These spacecraft are equipped with sensors designed to hear such things as radio and plasma waves, flowing freely through interplanetary space. These instruments are crucial for research and communication reasons. An additional bonus is that now we can finally hear different kinds of space waves as audible sounds. The results are often ear-splitting sounds, and sometimes audios are downright scary. Usually, when 2 black holes collide, they don't produce a sound. And still, thanks to modern technologies, we can now listen to this terrifying cosmic event. Do you hear it? This chirping sound is the sound that 2 black holes produced while slamming into each other around 1 billion light-years away from our planet. Interestingly, the tone of the sound rises when the holes spiral closer to each other and stops abruptly when they eventually merge. Now, do you hear that long, low buildup? It means that the merger is quite slow, more sedate, and the black holes taking part in this event are relatively lightweight. A more abrupt chirp is a sign of a fast merger, where the black holes are rather large. For example, the pair that produced this sound combined and created 1 black hole more than 80 times the mass of the Sun. Since each of these black holes weighed as much as several stars, they were hefty enough to produce waves while passing through space. I mean gravitational waves. They are undulations in the fabric of space-time, fanning outward at the speed of light. You can probably compare them to the ripples that appear on the surface of a pond after you throw a rock in the water. Naturally, the sound of black holes colliding isn't the only unusual noise recorded by our equipment. NASA's Juno probe passes by Jupiter every few weeks at a speed of up to 130 miles per hour and plows through all kinds of invisible fields in the process. And one of the most powerful signals it has recorded is Jupiter's bow shock. That's the point where the planet's magnetic field pushes against the incoming wind of solar particles. The sound produced during this standoff sounds similar to a sonic boom. Or this sound. It was produced by the Stardust space probe when it was passing through the dust left by Comet Tempel 1. In the process, debris hit the body of the spacecraft. It sounded as if some creature was rapping at the window or hurrying across a hard floor. Let's have a look at NASA's nuclear-powered Cassini spaceship. It spent 13 years exploring gas giant Saturn and its numerous potentially habitable moons. This mysterious and a bit spooky sound is actually radio waves emitted by the massive planet. Such waves are caused by a phenomenon which is similar to the one producing auroras on Earth. speaking of our own planet, it's surrounded by plasma. It consists of hot, ionized particles generated by sunlight. They're constantly slamming into Earth's atmosphere. NASA's Polar mission, which was launched a few decades ago, managed to record this breath-like hiss. That's what plasma orbiting our planet sounds like. As for these weird sounds, NASA doesn't say which space probe recorded them, but they're coming from Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede. It could have been the Galileo spacecraft, which orbited the system for around 8 years. But it probably doesn't matter so much. Just listen to this creepy noise that sounds like screams trying to break through from some hidden place. Our universe is an incredibly fine-tuned system. It constantly expands at a certain rate because of 2 reasons: all kinds of energy that exist in it and our laws of gravity. But if things were even a tiny bit different, you wouldn't be watching this video now. You wouldn't wake up, wouldn't drink your morning coffee or tea, and wouldn't hurry to work. All because humans wouldn't exist. As simple as that. Nothing would exist. And here's why. Imagine a thin, tall, rocky spire. It's here, on our home planet. You accidentally come across this spire and decide to balance a massive boulder on top of it. Most likely, this boulder will topple over and roll down one side of the spire, eventually ending up in the valley below. It would be bold of you to assume that the rock will stay on top of the spire unless it's perfectly balanced. When we see an example of such incredible balance in real life, we call it a system in unstable equilibrium. The universe is like this boulder, perfectly balanced in unstable equilibrium, or, as experts describe it, enormously fine-tuned. On the one hand, there's the expansion rate the universe had at one point close to the Big Bang. On the other hand, there's the sum total of all kinds of matter and energy that appeared at approximately the same time. I'm talking about radiation, normal matter, neutrinos, dark matter, antimatter, and dark energy. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, there's a complicated relationship between this expansion rate and the sum of all the matter and energy in the universe. And if you know the composition of the universe and its initial expansion rate, you can predict how it will evolve with time and what its destiny will be. If there's too much matter and energy compared to the expansion rate, such a universe will collapse. If there is, on the contrary, too little matter and energy, such a universe will keep expanding endlessly, even before atoms manage to form there. As for our universe, it neither collapsed nor expanded dramatically and irrevocably. And even today, 13.8 billion years after its formation, these two sides of the equation seem to be still perfectly in balance. The odds of it occurring, considering all kinds of random possibilities you can only imagine, are astronomically small. Of course, there's a tiny chance that our universe was born this way, with a perfect balance between all the stuff it contains and the initial expansion rate. But scientists don't like this idea. When facing a coincidence we can't easily explain, blaming it on the initial lucky circumstances is like giving up on science. From a scientific point of view, it's much better to try to find the reason why this coincidence could have occurred. In the case of our perfectly balanced universe, where the expansion rate matches up with the total energy density, the idea of cosmic inflation, a short and sudden episode of expansion, seems to be a great theory. Inflation could stretch the universe flat in the first 10 to 36 seconds after it came into existence, and when this inflation ended, the initial conditions of the Big Bang would be all set up. To understand inflation better, we should keep in mind that there are 4 fundamental forces present in nature: gravity, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. Strong nuclear force is that very binding force that holds fundamental and subatomic particles together, stabilizing matter. And weak nuclear force is involved in processes separating small particles, for example, radioactive decay. So, right after the Big Bang, these 4 forces were indistinguishable in behavior. But once the universe started to cool and expand, the fundamental forces suddenly started to behave differently, which caused a sudden release of huge amounts of energy, triggering rapid inflation. Interestingly, during inflation, nothing moved. It was the space around and between the particles that grew larger. In the future, after conducting more tests, we'll most likely find out the true reason why the universe is so finely tuned. But so far, we can only guess.
It seems that humanity has gone a long way since the first people appeared on Earth. We've invented so much cool stuff and developed new technologies. We've risen above other species after having built an advanced civilization. We've come from living in caves and cooking our food on fire to walking on the moon and creating 3D breakfasts. Does it mean we can be considered a Type 5 civilization? Oh, I see you're confused. Let me tell you about these civilization types and what they mean. The Type 1 title is given to species that have managed to harness all the available energy of their home planet. That's why this civilization is called a planetary civilization. They gather and store this energy to satisfy the demands of a growing population. We would need to boost our current energy production more than 100,000 times to get to this stage. And then we would be able to get control over all natural forces on the planet, like volcanoes, storms, or earthquakes. It's hard to believe, but it's actually a very basic level. You'll see it later. As for now, let's move to a Type 2 civilization. It can use and store energy at the scale of a star system. That's why this type is often called a stellar civilization. Experts have suggested several potential ways to do it. The most popular one is called the Dyson Sphere. This hypothetical device could encompass every single inch of a star, gathering its energy and transferring it to the planet. What would so much energy mean for the Type 2? First of all, nothing we know about could wipe out such a developed civilization. Let's say a moon-sized object entered our solar system and was heading towards Earth. No need to panic. We would be able to vaporize it as soon as we noticed it. Or maybe we'd just move our planet out of harm's way. Now, a Type 3 civilization can control energy at the immense scale of the entire host galaxy. That's the reason it's called a galactic civilization. The inhabitants of such a civilization would probably be totally different from the human race. They could be cyborgs, both biological and robotic beings. Maybe there would be colonies of robots capable of self-replication. They would spread across the galaxy, colonizing star systems. And still, these species would be restrained by the laws of physics, unless they figured out how to travel at the speed of light. At first, the scale describing civilization types didn't go beyond Type 3, but later, it was extended, and that's how Types 4 and 5 appeared. A Type 4 civilization knows how to harness energy at the scale of the universe it lives in. This could probably allow its inhabitants to live inside supermassive black holes. In any case, they would need to tap into energy sources we can't even imagine at the moment, using currently unknown laws of physics. And finally, an incredibly advanced Type 5 civilization might be living somewhere out there. If we reached this level, we would be able to manipulate energy both within our universe and other universes. Of course, at the moment, we're a very long way from achieving a Type 5 civilization, but it's not impossible. Assuming our world remains intact, we might continue advancing with every next generation. Then, a day may come when we'd be able to travel anywhere we want in the multiverse. Maybe we'd even use wormholes. Theoretical bridges using space-time that creates shortcuts, reducing travel distance and time. We'd be able to tap into mysterious dark matter to produce energy. And we would find the answers to tons of mysteries about us and the universe. But guess what? At the moment, we're not even a Type 1 civilization. Yep, we're not even on the scale yet. Duh! First of all, we're facing some physical limitations of each type of energy source. Plus, we'd need to balance them not to trigger even more climate changes and not make pollution levels rise. Scientists researching this question have concluded that humanity could potentially reach the level of Type 1. But it wouldn't happen until at least 2371. You wake up with a start, open your eyes and look around. Oh, you're inside your sleeping capsule. Its walls are littered with different buttons and tiny screens. You press one of them, and one of the sliding panels sweeps to the side. You crawl out of your pod and start another regular day on the moon. Or maybe you open your eyes and come up to the window to have a look at the weather outside. Everything seems to be as usual: blue trees, purple sky, and low-hanging yellowish clouds. Great, you won't need your acid rain protection today. Or maybe you'll open your eyes to the dry plains of the Red Planet. You'll eat your 3D printed breakfast and set off on a trip to Olympus Mons, the largest volcano on Mars. You've been planning this climb for ages. Whatever scenario it is, one thing is glaringly clear: you're not living on Earth. Why? There might be a few reasons why people could have abandoned our beautiful green paradise. The sun might have grown too old and started to expand, burning vegetation, boiling the oceans, and leaving Earth uninhabitable. Or it was probably a collision with the Andromeda Galaxy. Yes, the one that is bound to crash into the Milky Way in about 4.5 billion years. It could have been a wandering asteroid, large enough to destroy all kinds of life on our planet. Of course, these days, astronomers have their own ways of spotting such space intruders. But what if their equipment malfunctioned? It would end badly for Earth and Earthlings. A much sadder reason for us to leave our beloved planet would be our own actions and the risks we pose to it. According to statistics, these days, the onslaught of droughts, earthquakes, floods, and epic storms is triple the number from the 1980s and almost 54 times that of 1901. Climate change could lead to water shortages, a severe lack of food, and the submersion of coastal regions. If it all went too far, we'd have to conserve the planet to save at least some of its flora and fauna. Then, it would become a nature reserve the remaining people would sometimes visit. But if not on Earth, where would humanity live? Surprisingly, there are quite a few options. For example, we could dig several feet beneath the surface of the moon and build our bases there. Or the first towns on the moon might be built in craters and covered with protective materials, like plastic reinforced with a net made of titanium and UV-resistant superfiber. The inhabitants would have to access their homes through airlock entrances dug into a mound. Or we could skip the moon altogether and set off towards the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune. Yes, they're much farther from the sun and probably way too cold for us. But on the bright side, these moons are believed to contain vast amounts of water, carbon, and nitrogen. And still, the most likely destination is Mars. Unlike the moon, which has a very, very weak atmosphere that consists of unusual gases, Mars has a bit denser atmosphere, even though it's still about 100 times less dense than the atmosphere of our home planet. In any case, it can offer us some protection against harmful space radiation. Mars also has about 40% of Earth's gravity, which is not that bad. We could probably get used to it with time. Plus, there's water ice on the red planet. The soil there contains enough carbon to grow plants. With time, the planet could be terraformed with the help of water from underground ice or imported from an ice asteroid. We'd use this water to form a thin ocean and maybe even create a breathable atmosphere. Or we could find an exoplanet that has all the resources to support life. An exoplanet is a planet outside our solar system. It would probably be much easier for us to find a world that would be perfect for us, rather than reconstruct the already existing world with its own workings.
Dark, mysterious, cold space. Comets, asteroids, planets, stars, and something that's lurking over there, far beyond Pluto. Yup, this could be the 9th planet of our solar system, the one people have been wondering about for centuries. IRAS, which stands for the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, collected interesting data back in 1983. It could be proof that Planet 9 is hiding there. No one knows if it really exists, but this discovery helped to build a model to understand this potential planet better. And in 2016, scientists found out that some small space objects in the Kuiper Belt were orbiting a bit oddly. The Kuiper Belt is the outer area of our solar system. It's a ring in the shape of a donut, filled with leftovers from the times when our solar system was forming. You can find this donut beyond Neptune. The objects in that region of space have weird orbits, almost as if a big body with strong gravity is pushing them away. Knock knock, Planet 9 again. The theory says it might be 5 to 10 times the mass of our own planet and up to 20 times further away than Neptune. The astronomical unit equals the distance between our planet and the Sun. Pluto is approximately 40 astronomical units from the Sun, but Planet 9, if it exists, is 400 to 800 astronomical units away. It would take 10,000 to 20,000 Earth years for this mysterious planet to make a single circle around the Sun. This makes it harder for us to catch this space body. There's a theory Planet 9 may have formed between the orbits of Jupiter and Neptune, similar to the rest of the gas giants in our solar system. The gravitational force of one of the two huge planets probably kicked it out of its orbit. Oh no. Then Planet 9 could get ejected further away from the 8 planets we know about. It ended up as some sort of icy waste, quite small at the beginning. But as time went by, Planet 9 has cleared its orbit of frozen pieces of rock and dust and finally formed into a real planet. Another theory says that this could be a planet another star lost on its way while it was passing near our solar system. In any case, Planet 9 probably doesn't reflect that much sunlight since it's so far away. And astronomers aren't sure where exactly they should look for it. Space is dark, mysterious, endless, obviously. But if we do find Planet 9, it will be the first solid proof there are more planets in our solar system than we thought. Moving on to an interesting exoplanet, located only 90 light-years away from us. An exoplanet is generally a planet located outside our solar system. This one has an atmosphere with water clouds. 1 year there lasts 24 Earth days, and the planet travels around a red dwarf star, which is way dimmer and smaller than our Sun. That's why, even though the planet is 8 times closer to its star than we are to our Sun, the temperature there is similar to that on our planet. This exoplanet has a size similar to Neptune. It's also less dense, which means it's mostly made of gas, unlike Earth, which is made of rock. The average temperatures there is 140 degrees, which makes it one of the coolest small exoplanets we've ever discovered. And the cooler the exoplanet is, the bigger the chance we'll find clouds in its atmosphere. Researchers have discovered more than 4,000 exoplanets, but all of them have been found within the Milky Way, at least until now. For the first time, astronomers may have spotted a planet outside our galaxy. They called it M51 ULS-1. The planet is located in the Whirlpool Galaxy, a distant spiral galaxy 28 million light-years away from us. There was once a huge but pretty young star that got stuck in a gravitational dance with something that could be a dense neutron star, the collapsed core of a giant star, or a black hole. The star's dance partner had incredibly strong gravity. It was feeding on the star, greedily ripping away its plasma. Then something unusual happened. An unknown, maybe even Saturn-sized object passed by and blocked this confrontation from our solar system. Now, no one can see what is going on. But this could potentially be the farthest planet we've ever discovered. There's a newly discovered planet outside our solar system. As large as Jupiter, it orbits 2 stars. And, as we can observe it from our planet, it crosses in front of them both. The full circle around these 2 stars, which means 1 year, takes approximately 200 Earth days. On the day of the discovery of the previous planet, scientists also found it had an unusual companion. It's an extra-hot Jupiter with an ultra-tight orbit around its star. The year there lasts only 1.9 Earth days. This planet has a weirdly shaped orbit. Also, it travels in the opposite direction from the rotation of its star. If you could travel 57 light-years away from our planet, you'd see something pink lurking in the darkness. As you get closer, it becomes bigger and more fascinating. Yup, it's a magenta-colored planet. A few billion miles away from its sun, This guy is one of the youngest planets scientists have discovered. It's only 100 to 200 million years old. It's made of pink gas, similar to our Jupiter. So if you could fly closer to its surface, this gas would envelop you like a thick fog. You're coming closer and going deeper, and the gas is becoming darker, getting a reddish shade. And look at the planet's core. It's super hot. Because of its high temperature of 460 degrees Fahrenheit, this planet is like an oven. The heat is the reason the planet glows so brightly. You'll also notice the sky is hazy pink, with clouds made of droplets of frozen water, similar to ours. There's another exoplanet half as massive as Earth, which is one of the smallest planets we've ever found outside our solar system. It has a diameter of 5,600 miles. For comparison, Earth's diameter is 7,900 miles. The planet in question is mostly made of iron, similar to Mercury. Mercury has a massive iron core and a very thin crust, which makes it an oddball in our solar system. At its early stages, it collided with some space body at least once. That collision pulled its outer layers away, which is why only the firm iron core remained. Maybe this exoplanet participated in a huge space crash too. That's what probably took away the planet's mantle and left mostly its iron core. Or maybe this is just a remnant of a gaseous planet that used to be the size of Neptune. The atmosphere of the planet could be blown away by, let's say, a huge amount of radiation coming from the star. This planet is only 31 light-years away from us, and the day there is less than 8 Earth hours long. The planet is only a little bit bigger than Mars. People aren't likely to ever settle in that place because of its extreme temperatures that go up to 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. There might even be molten lava on the side of the planet that faces its star. Such temperatures are high enough to evaporate any atmosphere, so this planet might have had one in the past. Generally, gas giants like Jupiter can't support life because they have extreme weather conditions, temperature, and pressure, and there are no building blocks that might create life. But smaller terrestrial planets, such as, Earth, have more key ingredients like oxygen and liquid water. Plus, they have more temperate weather and other conditions. And still, not all of such planets support life, of course. It's not easy to find a planet with similar conditions as the ones we have on Earth, or at least the conditions that would allow life to develop there. But meet Kepler 22b, one of our most promising findings. It's 600 light-years away from us, twice bigger than our planet, and with temperatures of about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a so-called super-Earth. It's a category of planets unlike any we have in the solar system. They're more massive than Earth, but still lighter than ice giants such as Uranus or Neptune. Super-Earths can consist of rock, gas, or a mixture of these two. Kepler 22b is within the habitable zone of its parent star, which is less bright than our Sun. The planet probably has a rocky core. It may have an ocean, but it doesn't host any life. At least, we don't know about it yet. While we may think of ourselves as advanced after catching a glimpse of the 8 planets of our solar system and their 200 moons, we really have little idea of what's out there. So much so that there's speculation that there might be one more planet in our solar system. Scientists call it Planet X or Planet 9. This undiscovered world could be hidden way out past Neptune. Asteroids and dwarf planets in this area have weirdly unexplained altered orbits, and Planet X may be the reason. Tales of this mysterious planet began over 100 years ago with a man called Percival Lowell. Lowell had a great love of space, and aside from having an impressive mustache, he was also super rich. Ooh, that lucky guy. He used his riches to build an observatory in Arizona. He then dedicated it to study the odd motions of Uranus and Neptune. Their gravitational pulls are slower than those of all the other planets in our solar system, almost as if there is a giant hidden object pulling them off course. In 1906, Lowell theorized that there could be another planet out beyond Neptune. It probably caused those strange cosmic happenings. The man called this potential space body Planet X. In 1930, Pluto was discovered by Clyde Tombaugh at Lowell's very own observatory. It finally looked like people had an explanation for the weird orbital patterns. Lowell's team was on Cloud 9 after the discovery, but their celebrations were short-lived. Soon, they found out that Pluto is way too small to be having that much of an effect on the surrounding planets. And it was also too far away from them, so it was back to the drawing board. Planet X, if it exists, is 10 times the size of Earth and 4 times its radius. It would take at least 10,000 years for the planet to orbit the Sun, and it would sit over 200 times further out than our home planet. That's 600 astronomical units from the center of the solar system. FYI, an astronomical unit equals the distance between the Earth and the Sun. But while that sounds super far away, it's actually not. The distance between space bodies is usually measured in light years, and an astronomical unit is a much smaller unit of measurement. For context, the most distant thing detected from Earth is the galaxy GNZ11. Cute name, huh? It sits a staggering 32 billion light-years away. Even so, our telescopes can still spot it, and just 1 light-year is the same as 63,241 astronomical units. Woo! So, if our tech can detect a galaxy that's so far away, how have we not been able to uncover Planet X? Well, it's probably down to the fact that it might not even exist. The theory of Planet X was pretty much debunked back in 1989. It was discovered that the mysterious gravitational pulls of Neptune had been a red herring all along. Scientists had massively misjudged just how big Neptune actually was. Voyager 2 visited the planet and discovered its actual size. This new info explained the odd gravitational pulls, meaning they weren't being caused by the so-called Planet X. But that's not where our investigation ends, as the hypothetical 9th planet once again popped up around 10 years ago. While the evidence behind Lowell's theory was wrong, his belief in Planet X may not have been. In 2015, astronomers Michael Brown and Konstantin Batygin discovered that there were, in fact, unexplained gravitational forces at play past Neptune. There are satellites that orbit planets perpendicularly, which doesn't happen anywhere else in our solar system. There's also clusters of asteroids that move in very specific ways, so specific that it's basically impossible that it could be random. Even weirder, there are satellites that travel in completely opposite direction to the Sun, unlike most other things in the solar system. A planetoid called Sedna also appears to be being pulled towards something, along with 6 others, all going in the same direction. And Brown and Batygin aren't just any other stargazers. They're both well-respected scientists at the top of their game. Konstantin Batygin has been named in Forbes as one of 30 scientists who are changing the world. And Mike Brown was the man who rebranded Pluto as a dwarf planet. This means that when these guys say something, it's usually pretty legit, and you should probably listen. But the only way we can really prove Planet X exists is to actually find it. And this has turned out to be pretty difficult. To locate the planet, we'd need to use a method called transit photometry. This is basically where we monitor a whole bunch of stars for a long time and look out for any dips in the light they give off. These dips would likely be caused by a planet getting in the way, and ta-da, the existence of Planet X could be proved. But for this method to work, Earth, the new planet, and the Sun all have to be perfectly aligned. These circumstances are pretty rare, and if these conditions don't exist, the dip in light won't happen. Plus, this method would only really work with planets that are closer to the Sun than our Earth. That's Venus and Mercury. For anything past Earth, this technique is pretty much useless. Another technique we could use is to find the potential planet through a good old-fashioned telescope. But as you can imagine, that's insanely tricky. The furthest object that we've found in our solar system is a planetoid appropriately named Far, Far Out. But that's only 140 AU away from the Sun. That's only like a quarter of the way to Planet X. We can only see an object because of its brightness. The Sun is very visible to us because it emits huge amounts of light. And we can see the Moon because it reflects the Sun's light. Technically, the Moon has no right to appear brighter than everything else in the night sky. It only seems brighter because we're closer to it. The farther away an object is, the less bright it appears to us. The major issue with seeing the theoretical Planet X is that all objects in our solar system get their light from the sun. They reflect sunlight, and that's why we can see them. Given how far away from the sun Planet X might be, it makes it nearly impossible to see. And because of its really dim light, to view it, we would require perfect weather conditions as well as an extremely strong telescope. But Brown and Badigeon have found the perfect one. The Subaru telescope is located at the top of a dormant volcano in Hawaii. It's huge and is capable of capturing even the weakest light from distant space objects. The issue that we need to figure out is where to point it. Without knowing where Planet X actually is, this basically turns things into a giant guessing game. There are also only around 3 nights every year when the conditions are clear enough to see the hypothetical Planet X. It's difficult, but not impossible. And still, most astronomers have called it a day and agreed that Planet X doesn't exist, stating that it's just a common myth. The most widespread explanation for the weird gravitational pulls is that there's a tiny black hole in our solar system. It's pulling the planets toward us. But don't worry. They say it's not big enough to actually munch on a planet. So Earth is all good, for now. The issue with the black hole theory is that, once again, it's almost impossible for us to track the thing down. While its mass could be as great as that of Planet X, the hole itself would be squished down to the size of an orange. Telescopes wouldn't be of any use. To find it, people would have to look for the gamma rays sent off by objects as they fall into the black hole. Another way we could find it is to release hundreds of tiny spacecraft. They would pass close enough to the hypothetical hole, and when they got pulled toward it, we could probably detect it. But don't count out Brown and Badigeon's theory. It's still being documented by NASA. And until we find unmistakable evidence to prove any theories, Planet X might still be out there. So, we might be getting closer to finding a massive icy planet beyond Neptune's orbit. Sorry Pluto, still not you. Recently, some universe mapping using data from a telescope in Hawaii eliminated about 78% of the possible locations for this mysterious Waldo from space. Some people call it Planet 9, while others prefer Planet X. Either way, it's been causing controversy since its existence was first proposed, and that is mainly because no study so far can answer the big question: does it really exist? If discovered, Planet 9 would rank as the 5th largest planet in our solar system, with a mass 10 times that of Earth. It's also theorized to be gaseous, like Uranus. The initial study on Planet 9, dating back to 2016, suggests that this colossal new planet orbits the Sun 29 times farther out than Neptune, which sits at about 2.8 billion miles. As a result, the Planet 9 would take between 10,000 and 20,000 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. If confirmed, this yet-to-be-understood world would dominate a region larger than any other known planet in our cosmic neighborhood. These are all intriguing hypotheses, but without a single piece of evidence or observation to back them up. Before dismissing this as a wild guess, it is important to note that these researchers relied on complex mathematical modeling and computer simulations to speculate about the planet's characteristics, because that's what they do. The hypothetical presence of this planet would explain various mysterious features located beyond Neptune. We are specifically talking about the Kuiper Belt, a huge donut-shaped region filled with icy debris left over from the formation of the solar system, including comets and dwarf planets like Pluto. What happens is that the 6 farthest objects in the Kuiper Belt exhibit elliptical orbits that are all oriented in a similar direction within physical space and tilted approximately 30 degrees downward relative to the orbital plane of our 8 known planets. What's strange here is that, despite their distinct orbital velocities around the solar system, they maintain this alignment. The likelihood of such alignment occurring randomly is extremely low, around 0.007%. So, here comes Planet 9, a hypothetical massive celestial body that offers a plausible explanation for this strange phenomenon, potentially exerting gravitational influence to shape these orbits. The initial theory didn't hold up for long, facing accusations of observational bias and calculation errors. Then, in 2017, another study popped up, sparking back the idea that maybe Planet 9 is out there after all. This time, Spanish astronomers tried a novel approach, focusing on observing extreme trans-Neptunian objects. These celestial bodies orbit the Sun in highly stretched elliptical paths, with average distances exceeding 13 billion miles. The research suggests that the distances between these objects' nodes and the Sun might provide clues to Planet 9's location. You see, these nodes are the points where a celestial body's orbit intersects the solar system's plane. When these objects reach these points, they're more likely to interact with other solar system bodies, potentially causing significant changes in their orbits or even collisions. So, if the trajectory of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects remains stable, everything's fine. But if it's not, well, that's a sign that something else, something big, is messing with their path. And that's exactly what the research found. There is something unseen out there, throwing these objects off course. And that something could be a planet, chilling at a distance between 300 to 400 times farther from the Sun than Earth. To this day, the study of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects is the strongest evidence we've got for Planet 9's existence. And if you're still not convinced by this theory, know that strange motions like these have led to planetary discoveries before. Neptune, for instance, was spotted because Uranus's motion didn't quite agree with the predictions of Newtonian gravity. But the deflection of its orbit could be explained if it was caused by a pull of an undiscovered planet. And just like that, we discovered Neptune. Now, the year is 2021, and there's all this buzz about Planet 9 again. After correcting some old guesses, studies are now leaning towards the idea that this mystery world follows an epic loop around the Sun every 7,000 years. That is massive news, because it means this planet might be closer than we ever thought, making it easier for our telescopes to spot it. The paper also suggests there is a whopping 99% chance that the funky orbits of these distant objects are all because of this unseen planet, not just some cosmic coincidence. Now, the odds of this whole situation being a fluke are down to a 1 in 250 chance, which is much better than the 1 in 10,000 chance back in 2016. All these optimistic numbers have brought us to where we are today, keeping our hopes and working on better equipment to continue the mission of spotting Planet 9. As mentioned earlier, researchers in Hawaii created some kind of treasure map utilizing the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System to eliminate 78% of its locations. This is great news, considering how challenging it is to find a planet-sized needle in a cosmic haystack. But unfortunately, Planet 9's presence remains a ghost in the dark outer reaches of our solar system. Enthusiasts are still convinced of its existence and believe it is only a matter of time before we celebrate the discovery of Earth's new cosmic cousin. They're putting their hopes on the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, which is currently under construction in Chile and is scheduled to begin science operations in late 2025. Over the course of 10 years, this observatory will scan the entire southern hemisphere sky every few nights with a 27-foot, fast-moving telescope equipped with the largest digital camera in the world. The idea is to catalog everything in the solar system, reaching out to and beyond Neptune, and tracking the movements of millions of celestial objects, including space junk, asteroids, comets, and stars. If Planet 9 is indeed out there, this next-generation telescope could be the one to find it. The existence of this mysterious planet is far from being universally accepted in the scientific community. That is simply because Planet 9 isn't the only explanation for the strange phenomenon occurring beyond Neptune. One theory suggests that a group of distant objects, such as dwarf planets, comets, and moons, might be collectively influencing the orbits of the extreme trans-Neptunian objects. Others believe that a black hole is behind all this. These compressed masses are some of the densest objects in the universe, potentially capable of affecting the orbits of other masses, like how this supposed ghost planet 9 is believed to be doing. Another bold perspective suggests that our current understanding of the laws of gravity is flawed, actually incomplete. This theory, known as modified Newtonian dynamics, proposes that these distant icy objects exhibit strange behavior not due to influence from another planet, but rather because the immense gravitational field of the Milky Way is influencing them. However, even supporters of this theory acknowledge that it is too early to draw firm conclusions, and much more extensive research is still required. While we continue our relentless hunt for Planet 9, some astronomers have taken it a step further, suggesting the existence of a hypothetical Planet 10. This world has a mass and size like that of Mars or Earth and is located on the edges of the Kuiper Belt. But the thing is, if this alleged Planet 10 is indeed as small as scientists believe, it might not have enough gravity to clear its orbit of debris. And that is pretty similar to what happens with Pluto, being one of the reasons why it got into trouble back in 2006. So yeah, it's better not to get too excited. This supposed Planet 10 might end up classified as another dwarf planet.
For thousands of years, people knew only about the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which they could see using simple telescopes, or even by the naked eye if conditions were good. But in the late 18th century, a famous astronomer named Sir William Herschel discovered a new planet that was icy blue in color. At first, people thought it was a star, but later they realized it was a planet. Today, we know it as Uranus, a planet that's more than 19 times farther away from the Sun than Earth. It's so far away that it takes Uranus 84 years to complete one trip around the Sun. This astronomer also discovered many other interesting things in space, like double stars and nebulae. In the mid-1800s, scientists noticed something pulled Uranus and strangely tugged its orbit. They thought there must be another planet out there, and they used math to predict where it would be. Finally, in 1846, they found Neptune using a telescope. It was too faint to see with the naked eye because it was too far away from the Sun. It was all so exciting. Who knows how many other planets could be there, lurking in the darkness of our solar system? Back in the mid-1800s, astronomers noticed something unusual was happening in the sky. A small rocky planet named Mercury was behaving strangely. It didn't follow the predictable orbit that was expected of it. One of the astronomers was a brilliant French scientist named Urbain Le Verrier. He came up with a theory that there could be another planet in our solar system no one had yet discovered. It would be located somewhere between Mercury and the Sun. This hypothetical planet, which he named Vulcan after the Roman god of fire, would have an incredibly hot surface, and it could be a potential explanation for Mercury's strange behavior. He never surely claimed Vulcan was really the one thing disturbing the orbit of Mercury. But, excited by the possibility of discovering a new planet, astronomers all over the world took the idea of Vulcan. For a planet that didn't exist, people committed to developing ideas and getting information about it. Some scientists didn't think it was likely that they had missed another planet as big as Mercury. It would have been hard not to see it by then. But there was a tiny chance of a smaller planet existing inside Mercury's orbit that was too close to the Sun, so no one could see it. One theory said it was about 13 million miles away from the Sun. Mercury is the planet with the most eccentric orbit in our solar system, but the closest point it gets to the Sun is about 28.5 million miles. This means Vulcan would be under half of that distance. The theory moved on, saying that if Vulcan existed, it would orbit the Sun every 19 days and 18 hours, and its path would be tilted about 12 degrees relative to the path of other planets in our solar system. Vulcan's position at its furthest point from the Sun would still be too close to the Sun to be seen with the naked eye, even during twilight. The only chance of seeing Vulcan would be during a solar eclipse, or when it passed in front of the Sun, which, as the theory said, would be 2 to 4 times a year. They had a theory that this mysterious planet was so close to the sun that it could only be seen during a total solar eclipse when the moon blocked out the sun's blinding glare. So, every time there was an eclipse, scientists would peer at the sun, hoping to catch a glimpse of Vulcan. They were trying really hard, but no matter what, they couldn't find this mysterious planet. Some astronomers claimed to have spotted it during eclipses, but no one could ever confirm or find evidence for that. The theory of Vulcan was left waiting for some better times. Einstein had a different idea. You know about his theory of general relativity, right? That's where he claimed gravity wasn't some sort of natural force, but a result of space-time curved because of the presence of giant space objects, like planets and stars. Planets circle around the sun in their usual orbit because space-time is curved. That means the planets are kind of falling towards the central star of our solar system. And Einstein tried to explain Mercury's unusual orbit using his own theory of relativity. Unlike the other planets in our solar system, Mercury's orbit wasn't that circular. Instead, it seemed to wobble slightly, as if there was an invisible force pulling it away. Einstein said this could be happening because the massive gravity of our sun was actually curving the fabric of space-time around it. He claimed it's possible this changed Mercury's orbit a little bit. It took the scientific community a while to test this theory, but it eventually seemed like the most plausible explanation. Even though Einstein's theory gave us a more elegant explanation for Mercury's strange orbit, some scientists were still holding out hope for Vulcan. It was especially hard to let go of the idea of Vulcan because Mercury is also the planet that's really hard to see from where we're standing. But later, more and more scientists started accepting Einstein's theory above their imagination. And they would observe a total solar eclipse specifically to test Einstein's theory of relativity, not because of Vulcan. And Vulcan is not the only hypothetical planet everyone was talking about. In the newer age, some believe there could be a mysterious planet lurking in the outer part of our solar system. But this one is more likely to exist. No one has seen it directly yet, but computer simulations show this so-called Planet 9, or Planet X, is probably somewhere there beyond Neptune. Neptune and Planet X could be similar in size. Planet X could be 10 times more massive than Earth and circles around our Sun in an elongated shape, which is on average 20 times farther from the Sun than Neptune. A year there may last between 10,000 to 20,000 Earth years. By comparison, a year on Neptune lasts 165 Earth years. Something this big moving out there beyond Neptune could explain the unusual orbits of smaller objects in the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt is the area of our solar system beyond Neptune and where it orbits. And there are most likely many asteroids, comets, and some other smaller bodies there, mostly made of ice. There was another hypothetical planet called Nibiru. Remember those rumors that the world could end back in 2012? One of the popular scenarios was Nibiru, which some claimed would hit our home planet at the end of the year. Of course, nothing happened. We're still here, all set and good, but the idea of Nibiru seemed interesting. Stories started in the 1970s when a man named Zecharia Sitchin mentioned Nibiru in his book, The 12th Planet, claiming it orbits the Sun every 3,600 years. But there's no chance a planet with such an eccentric orbit wouldn't disrupt other planets in our solar system with its gravity. And if it was really coming that close to Earth in 2012, we were supposed to be able to see it with the naked eye. Some simple calculations showed Nibiru would have been nearly as bright as Mars at its dimmest, and brighter than the faintest stars you see from a city. Oh well, maybe we'll have more luck in the next 3,500 and something years. In 2011, a comet named Elenin appeared that many people thought could be Nibiru. But when you're looking at comets and planets through a telescope, you see they appear differently. A comet has a coma, which is a gas atmosphere, together with a tail. something a planet doesn't have. Plus, this comet didn't slam into the Earth. It came too close to our Sun and fell apart. The leftover pieces will continue moving on their way to the outer solar system for the next 12,000 years.
TRES-2b is a planet where night never ends. And it's not your regular night with stars shining in the beautiful skies. Here it's pitch dark and scorching hot. TRES-2b is a gas giant, roughly 1.5 times more massive than Jupiter, and its surface absorbs light better than charcoal. It might also have a faint dark red glow because of its burning air, which is as hot as fresh lava. Lovely. In the star system of 55 Cancri, there are 5 planets, 4 of which are gas giants similar to Jupiter and Saturn. But the 5th one, or rather the first, because it's closest to the star, is different in a most horrible way. 55 Cancri E is so close to its sun that half the planet's surface is a literal ocean of molten lava. The other half is in eternal darkness because it never sees the sun. The planet is always turned to its star on one side, and between the scorching and the dark, there's the twilight zone, a thin strip of gloomy nothingness. HD 189377b, I'm not going to say that again, is the only exoplanet in the orbit of its star, and at first glance it looks quite pretty, blue and white swirls making up wondrous patterns on the surface. But these pleasant colors actually come from hard silicate particles in the planet's atmosphere, which means it rains glass here. But the worst is that winds reach the speed of 5,400 miles per hour, or almost Mach 7. Well, for comparison, the fastest wind speed on Earth was 254 miles per hour, over 20 times less. Thus, the glass falling from the sky travels horizontally at hypersonic speeds, shredding everything in its path. The next system, whose name I won't even try to pronounce, this one, has 3 exoplanets, which are all being slowly destroyed by their own star. It happens because that star is not a regular, it's a pulsar, a rapidly spinning core of an exploded star. It creates powerful electromagnetic pulses in several directions while rotating at several thousand times per second. As a result, the planets orbiting this deceased star are slowly being eaten away and will eventually disappear entirely. Kepler-70 is a hot blue dwarf star that exploded into a red giant some 18 million years ago. At the time, it was orbited by at least 2 planets, the closer of which was a Jupiter-like gas giant. Its name was Kepler-70b, and it still exists, but the overgrown star consumed it and transformed it into a blazing hot rocky world. Right now, it's one of the hottest planets ever discovered. Its temperature is higher than the surface of our Sun. It was lucky to survive spending time inside the star, but it's evaporating now and will probably be no more in the near future. WASP-12b is one of the weirdest and saddest planets out there. The enormous gravity of its star, combined with the planets consisting mostly of gas, result in the star slowly devouring its protege. WASP-12b has already taken the form of an egg, stretched toward its merciless sun, and it's unable to do anything with its condition. In another 10 million years, the planet will inevitably succumb to the voracious star's appetite. If you ever wondered what it's like to walk on ice and hot coals at the same time, Gliese 436b is a planet that would give you a vivid example. Being extremely close to its sun, the Neptune-sized exoplanet boasts temperatures hotter than a blazing oven, and yet it's covered in ice, which burns incessantly. This ice is much denser due to the enormous gravity of the planet, staying solid even under extreme conditions and not melting away. No list of frightening worlds could do without mentioning Venus, the Earth's evil twin. The second planet from the Sun has an atmosphere so thick and full of clouds that its surface is much hotter than that of Mercury. Volcanic eruptions constantly thrash Venus. Its gravity is almost 100 times stronger than ours, and those clouds I mentioned are not made of water but of sulfuric acid, which condenses and rains down on the ground, adding to the inferno. But even if you were brave or crazy enough to try to pass through these clouds, you probably couldn't. The winds up there are as strong as some of the most powerful hurricanes back on Earth. Here we have a very long name for a very, very cold planet. Although the host star is not too far away, it's a small and rather cool red dwarf, whose light and heat barely even reach the planet. The temperatures out there fall as low as minus 370 degrees, which is only marginally warmer than absolute zero. The exoplanet is thus dark, gloomy, and covered in eternal ice that never thaws. Still, if it has a rocky core, it might generate some heat, so there's a chance that deep below the frozen surface, some unknown alien things might lurk. Dimidium, located roughly 50 light-years away from our solar system, is a planet hostile to any living thing on many accounts. It's tidally locked to its sun, which means one of its sides is always facing the star, while the other is always turned away. The hot side is heated to over 1800 degrees, perpetually blown over with winds reaching 600 miles per hour. Despite Dimidium being a gas giant, it has a large amount of iron in it, which melts and evaporates in the atmosphere, creating clouds. And when those cool down, they fall on the surface in the infernal rain of molten iron. Oxygen is usually viewed as an element that might bring life to a planet, but this is definitely not the case for Osiris. Scientists were shocked to find oxygen on this planet, or rather around it, because it's 8 times closer to its star than Mercury is to the Sun. This extreme distance makes Osiris a living melting pot, where anything that could burn will. It's also responsible for a very short orbit of the planet around the star. A year on Osiris is just 3.5 days on Earth. To boot, the atmosphere of the planet is constantly blown and melted away by the heat from its sun. Karat Exo 3b is neither as hot nor as cold as some of the others on this list, but it's terrifying in its own more insidious way. It's a gas giant similar in size to Jupiter, yet 20 times denser. This makes this exoplanet's gravity weigh down on everything on its surface 50 times more than it would on Earth. Stepping on it would be your ultimate doom, because you'd be immediately crushed by the density of its atmosphere. Karat 7b is another oven-like world. Its day-to-day temperature is over 4,000 degrees. Combined with the rocky surface, it presents an infernal landscape. The rocks on the ground bubble and boil, evaporating in the atmosphere, where they cool down and eventually fall back on the surface in a brimstone rain. The saddest thing about Karat 7b is that it might have once been a gas giant whose atmosphere melted away from the heat, leaving only the scorched core. We're used to thinking that asteroids are the only free-floating rocks in space, but things like OTS-44 make you think twice and shiver. Imagine a planet about 11 times more massive than Jupiter roaming in space without being bound to the orbit of any star. Given its gargantuan size and mass, if OTS-44 collides with any other planet, it would utterly destroy it and go on floating as if nothing happened. Scarier still, scientists are sure there are millions of such rogue planets out there, just waiting to be discovered. There's no hard proof of their existence yet, but theoretically, carbon planets have formed somewhere closer to the center of our galaxy. Any oxygen getting in their atmosphere will get into a reaction with carbon and transform into CO2, forming black toxic clouds. On the ground, there would be oceans made of tar, spewing up geysers of methane and crude oil. There would be rains too, but they'd be far from refreshing. Torrents of pure gasoline and hot liquid asphalt would blast the ground and probably burst into flames on impact. Hard to imagine anything that would survive such conditions.
You take a giant straw and begin to inflate Saturn. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's enough. Now let's add some giant rings. That's it. This is Super Saturn, also called Saturn on steroids. It's a real object that scientists discovered in 2012, a planet named J1407b, and astronomers are still not sure what it really is. It could be a gas giant, like Jupiter or Saturn in our solar system. Then there would be no solid surface there. And if you wanted to set foot on that planet, you just fall through it, all the way to the core. But it could also be a brown dwarf. That's something between a large planet and a full-fledged star. Such objects have to be heavy enough to start thermonuclear reactions, like those going on inside stars. But the power of these reactions is too weak for brown dwarfs to glow and emit heat. To imagine the size and weight of J1407b, let's look at our Earth. If you put our planet on a scale, it'll show 6 and another 21 zeros tons. Our planet is also about 7,900 miles across. Now, that's Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Its diameter is 11 times as great as that of Earth. It's also 318 times heavier. If Jupiter were a bucket, you could put 1,321 Earths in it. And this is the hero of the day, Super Saturn. It's almost 20 times as large as Jupiter. To balance the scales, you need to put 6,360 Earths on the other side. The planet's rings are so wide that if they were in the solar system, they would take up more than half the space between the Sun and Earth. And if Super Saturn switched places with the original Saturn, you'd see those rings with the unaided eye. They would be larger than a full moon. Presumably, these rings appeared in the same way as the ones around our Saturn. One theory says they're the remains of a moon that was once there. Its orbit was unstable, and over time, the moon got torn apart by the tidal forces of the huge planet it orbited. Small pieces of the former moon took their places in the giant's orbit. They collided with one another, like in a blender. After some time, everything that was left was basically particles of dust and ice moving around the colossal planet. Another theory suggests that the rings appeared after the moon collided with an asteroid or another moon. Then the gravitational blender did its job and turned the moon's debris into the rings. Some scientists think the rings formed at around the same time as the planet itself. So they're just the remains of the planetary nebula, which is a cloud of gas, space debris, and dust. Later, it probably shrunk and solidified to form a planet. We can only guess where Super Saturn got its rings from, but scientists say their mass is 80% of that of Earth. It may mean that the moon that used to orbit J1407b was about the same size as our planet. There's a little gap in the middle of these rings. Scientists think Super Saturn's moon might be there. If this is the case, it should be about the size of Mars. If scientists are right and Super Saturn is actually a brown dwarf, then this is an incredible discovery. Scientists will be able to watch it age. Supposedly, brown dwarfs lose their energy and shrink, fading in the process. And when a brown dwarf exhausts all its energy, it turns into a black dwarf. It's easy to confuse it with a black hole. People haven't discovered black dwarfs anywhere in the universe yet, because they take trillions and quadrillions of years to form. Our universe is too young, and none of the stars, even those that appeared when the universe was born, have had time to become black dwarfs. One of the oldest objects in the universe is the white dwarf, with a pretty long name, WD 0346 plus 246. It's about 11 to 12 billion years old and half as cold as our sun, and it's still cooling. It would need around 10 plus another 15 zeros years to turn into a black dwarf. For comparison, the universe is 1.4 and 10 zeros years old. Scientists believe that a black dwarf will exist for about 10 plus 25 zeros years, feeding on dark matter. After that, its protons, the smallest particles of matter, will begin to decay. And then, the black dwarf will simply evaporate. That will take another 10 plus 49 zeros years. But if the protons remain intact, a much more interesting scenario will await the black dwarf. In another 10 and 1500 zeros years, the black dwarf will become an iron star. It's essentially just a cannonball in space. The iron sphere will exist billions of times longer than our entire universe has existed, until it suddenly turns into a black hole. So, the process of the formation of a black dwarf is extremely long. It'd take a regular star an insane amount of time to age that much. But Super Saturn, if it is a brown dwarf, may be much closer to this state. Saturn on steroids is not the only strange planet in our universe. This is Gliese 436b. It's been detected using the transit method. A transit happens when a planet moves between its host star and an observer. It looks similar, to a lunar eclipse. This planet is 4 times the size of Earth and 22 times as heavy. That's almost like Neptune. It's an exotic water world. The water there is solid, but it's not ice. It has a temperature of about 520 degrees Fahrenheit. The water in your pot turns into steam at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. But on Gliese 436b, the liquid remains solid because of the extreme pressure on the planet. Scientists have also discovered that the planet's atmosphere is evaporating into outer space. That's why there's a giant circular cloud around it. It's constantly moving in its orbit, giving the planet a long tail that looks like that of a comet. Cancri E holds incredible riches worth more than all the money on Earth. There are diamonds scattered all over the planet. Cancri E is about twice as wide and 8 times as heavy as Earth. This planet doesn't rotate. Only one of its sides always faces its host star. The surface temperature there is almost twice as high as the temperature of a burning fire. And since the host star is rich in carbon, the planet contains plenty of this element too. The intense pressure and temperatures help turn carbon into graphite and diamonds. Unfortunately, this planet is 40 light years away from our home, so it'd take about 730,000 years to get there on a regular rocket. Another planet rich in gems is HAT P7b. It's about 1,000 light years away from Earth. It's 60% as large and nearly twice as heavy as Jupiter. The planet is so close to its host star that it makes one revolution around it in just 2 Earth days. Because of such close proximity to the star, HAT P7b is almost as hot as a white dwarf. If you look at the night side of this planet, you'll see unusual clouds. Scientists believe that these clouds may be rich in corundum material. This is the very substance that forms rubies and sapphires, so it's likely to rain very expensive and beautiful gems there. WASP 12b is one of the darkest planets ever discovered. Only one of its sides faces its host star. The planet's surface is so dark that it eats up about 94% of all visible light, so it looks a lot like a black hole. The host star heats up the planet so much that the material there continuously evaporates. Then the star's strong gravity pulls this cloud toward itself, forming a disk. But TRES-2b is the champion. It's the darkest planet known to people. It absorbs 99% of the light coming from its star, which means it consumes more light than a piece of coal. 1% of the remaining light looks red as it gets reflected by this gas giant. From afar, this planet looks very evil. One of the oldest planets in the universe is PSR B1620 26b. It's about 12.7 billion years old. This means that it formed about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 host stars have had time to evolve. One is a white dwarf. The other is a pulsar that makes almost 100 revolutions per second. Sunrises on this planet must be stunning. Right now, this star system is moving toward a dense cluster of stars. This is likely to lead to a stellar collision, so the fate of this planet is unknown. Kepler 438b is one of the most Earth-like planets. It's only 12% larger and is in the habitable zone of its host star, not too close and not too far away. It's a sweet spot where water doesn't evaporate because of the heat and doesn't turn into ice because of the cold. This planet might host life on its surface. In the future, it may also become a new home for humanity, but it would take people about 470 years to get to this planet, even if we traveled at the speed of light, which is impossible due to the laws of physics.
We're traveling through space at the speed of light. The route from Earth to the Sun at that speed will take only 8 minutes, but it would take us about 35 years to reach our destination, which is, by the way, still very fast. By comparison, a conventional rocket would take about 600,000 years to make the journey. And here we are. It's a star system suspiciously very similar to our own. And our scientists suspect that life could exist here, just like on Earth. A red dwarf, 30% the size and weight of the Sun, lies at the heart of this star system. But these are the planets orbiting the star that interest us most. The first of these is L9859b. Its size is somewhere between Earth and Mars, but it's very light. It's only half the mass of Venus. But life is impossible on this rocky planet. It's too close to the star, and it's so hot, you'd burn a cake if you tried baking it on its surface. It's about 100 degrees higher than the maximum of your oven. The planet makes a complete circle around its host star in just 2 days, compared to 365 for Earth. And it gets 22 times more energy than we get from the sun. So it's not only hot there, but there's a lot of dangerous radiation. The next planet is 2.8 million miles from its host star. That's 13 times closer than the distance from Mercury to the sun. And it makes a complete revolution around the star in 3.7 days. But what's interesting is that the planet is 30% bigger than the Earth and twice as heavy. So it belongs to the class of super-Earth planets. Such planets can be rich in water ice, methane, and hydrogen. These are some of the elements that are necessary for life's existence. Many scientists believe that it's on such planets that extraterrestrial civilizations can live. But because of the great weight of the planet, it has a strong gravitational force. So these civilizations may not be able to fly into space because it's harder for them to get out of the gravitational trap of a super-Earth planet. However, life isn't possible here because the planet is still too close to the host star. And just like in our solar system, the 2 nearest planets are too hot. But the third planet looks more promising. L9859d. It's almost twice as heavy as the Earth and 50% bigger. Scientists have calculated that about 1/3 of its mass could be water. For comparison, the mass of all water on Earth is only 0.02%. The presence of water is the main condition for the emergence of life. But we can only guess where the water might be. It could be on the surface, but high temperatures can turn large oceans into giant clouds of steam. But water can also be contained in the groundwater below the surface. Well, we can't know that for sure yet. Let's move on to the next planet in the star system. This newly discovered planet is of the Super Venus class, L9859e. It's a rocky planet 3 times the size of Earth. The Super Venus class means that the planet is heavy enough to have an atmosphere, but the conditions there are more like a greenhouse. Different gases fill the atmosphere there. Star rays pass through them to the planet's surface, reflect off it, and rise upward. But the dense gases don't let them leave the atmosphere, so the planet gets hotter and hotter. This is the greenhouse effect that we try so hard to avoid on Earth. On top of that, the stellar wind carries water vapor and other elements from the upper layers of the atmosphere into outer space. Life cannot exist on such a planet, nor could it ever originate, just like on Earth's twin sister, Venus. So far, all the planets we've looked at are outside the habitable zone of the host star. That's the sweet spot at a perfect distance from the star. Not too close so that the planet isn't too hot and the water there doesn't evaporate instantly. And not too far away, so that the planet doesn't look like a cold desert. And planets B, C, D, and E are too close to the host star. But there's another hypothetical planet F in this star system, located right in this sweet spot. This super-Earth candidate is 2.5 times heavier than our home planet. So we have hopes that it's a rocky world, just like the other planets in this star system. The weight of planet F is enough to have a dense atmosphere, and the temperature on its surface should be suitable for water to exist there in liquid form. The planet makes a complete circle around its host star in 23 days, which literally means it's New Year every 3 weeks. It isn't very likely, though, that there's a civilization there that celebrates it. Indeed, the very existence of this planet is very doubtful, because we still have no direct evidence. All the other planets have been discovered by the transit method. That's when we point our telescopes directly at a star and watch its brightness change. When there's a slight drop in the star's brightness, that's when a planet has passed between us and the star, like this dot. We have a short period of time while the planet is in the background of the star to determine its size and speed. Sometimes we can observe such transits of Mercury and Venus on the solar disk. And there are at least 29 potentially habitable planets out there in distant space that can observe Earth in the same way. About 1,715 stars within a few hundred light years are perfectly located for it. Each star has planets around it, but only 29 of them are in the habitable zone. So there really could be life and an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization out there. If so, they could point their telescopes toward the sun and see a small dot pass across the solar disk. And they could have been making these observations for at least the last 5,000 years. So they could see how our civilization was born and how we evolved. Moreover, these planets are close enough to pick up our radio signals and even television broadcasts. But it works both ways. Radio signals travel through space at the speed of light. We mastered this technology about 100 years ago. So if there really is a civilization out there somewhere, we would pick up their signals too. But so far, it hasn't happened. So we have no proof of the existence of life on these planets. The discovery of a star system like L9859 is very important to us because we're always looking for life outside of our solar system. And super Earth-class planets are even better suited for the origin of life than planet Earth itself. Such planets are sometimes called super-habitable. So some scientists think that Earth is a good place for life, but not the best. Super-habitable planets would have to be 30% larger than Earth and twice as heavy. This would create stronger gravity, which would make the atmosphere on the planet denser and with a higher concentration of oxygen. This in turn would raise the average temperature on the planet to a perfect 77 degrees Fahrenheit, so plants would thrive there. Also, stronger gravity makes the surface of the planet flatter, so there might be more oceans there than on Earth. This would make aquatic life much more diverse. The host star also plays a very important role. It should be smaller than the sun. The bigger the star, the more of its fuel it burns. This means that the lifespan of such stars is much shorter. For example, the lifespan of the sun is about 10 billion years, but a red dwarf can live up to 30 billion years. More time, more opportunity for the birth of life and evolution. So far, scientists have discovered 24 superabundant planets, but that still doesn't mean that there is life there for real. But some scientists believe that there are already at least 36 advanced civilizations in our galaxy, besides Earth. They've searched for similar worlds on the star map. First, we find stars that look like the sun among about 100 billion stars throughout the galaxy. Now we choose from them those that are rich in iron. Such stars burn at the perfect temperature and help the planets around them gain an iron core and become Earth-like. Now let's pick relatively young stars from this pile, because when they get older, they expand and either absorb the planets around them or burn them up. One last thing. Let's find planets in this pile that are in the habitable zone of the star. And voila! 36 worlds may be inhabited by some unknown civilization.